No.
Welcome to the My Haunt Life podcast.
Hello and welcome to the My Haunt Life podcast. This is episode 18, the Scare LA review special. I'm Mike.
And this is Russell.
We left off on the last podcast saying that we were going to talk about the Tension Experience panel at Scare LA. And that is what our day started with on Saturday. Doors opened at 11. This panel started at 11:30.
Those of us who had been notified within the previous days leading up to Scare LA that we were going to be able to attend this panel, immediately, as soon as we got tickets, everything in place, we ran to the room because they were a little slow getting tickets to everyone, and so people were actually going on the forum saying, "I'm afraid I'm going to be late. I'm still in line." But they held the panel a few minutes very graciously, got everyone in the room. And then it started to unfold very much like your typical convention panel. Absolutely. That's how it began. There was a moderator. The moderator had gone on to the forums a few days previous. The moderator's name was Jonathan Luther, and he had asked for questions from participants in the Tension Experience.
And you say Jonathan Luther. Now, Luther has an important connection within the Tension Experience. If you've been following, if you found the hidden video, that was of Rosemary Luther, and also James Luther, who is an accepted initiate in the March newsletter. So, is Jonathan their spawn, their relative, cousin, son? Who knows? But that Luther name does have importance, I think.
So Jonathan welcomed us to the panel. He was going around welcoming people and speaking about the lottery, like happy that we had been chosen to attend the panel. And then he took the stage, and the first thing he did actually was he called four of us up on stage. And Mike, you and I were called up, and basically we were looking for people who'd been participating just to answer a couple of quick questions about what the experience had been like so far for them. So Mike and I were called up on stage, and also they called up Kim, and they called up Andrew. And Andrew is one of the first people ever to write an article about the Tension Experience, which appeared on Blumhouse.com. And Andrew's been involved since the very, very early days. Almost, I think to some degree, like they were beta testing on Andrew to some degree.
Right.
He was completely a guinea pig on the early stages of this.
And it was cool, because we dropped our in-game personas, our allegiances, and we were just ourselves. Like even though Kim was sitting next to me as the evil BOS, it didn't matter because it was Kim, and actually Kim sitting next to me. So
she hugged you.
Yeah.
And she hugged me a little bit, too.
Yeah.
And we tried to fist bump, but it was very awkward.
That's because you tried to fist bump. Were you wearing your flat brim hat when you did that?
No.
Because that's why it didn't work.
This is why I'm friends with Mike. He coaches me.
Yeah. Anyways, that was really cool because we don't get to see each other a lot, so a lot of what we say on the forums to each other, and we get those digs in towards each other, and BOS and the OOA being evil and all of that went away because when it comes down to it, we all do really like each other, and we're all friends.
And we're all enjoying this experience.
So Jonathan asked us all different questions about how we found out about it, what we like so far, things like that. And it was a good introduction for the people that haven't been that involved, because I know there were people that got invited and were in the crowd that haven't really participated. Charles, I'm looking at you. And so after they asked us some questions, we were asked to go back to our seats. That's when the fun began. Jonathan then called up Ellis Gordon. If you don't know who Ellis Gordon is, he is the man behind it all. He is one of the creators of the Tension Experience.
One thing that surprised everyone when they introduced Ellis Gordon, we talked about this afterwards, Mike. I don't know if you talked about it with anyone, but he's this really young guy.
Yeah.
And I think that took everyone by surprise at how young his appearance was. But he took the stage. He seemed very, very open. He seemed absolutely ready and willing and excited to answer questions.
Yeah, it was a good breath of fresh air seeing him, because he was excited, and his excitement matched many of our excitements.
Yes.
And, we were in for a treat because, wow, finally, all this mystery and shadowy secrets, like we can actually finally get some answers. And here he is, the creator. Like, we're going to find some stuff out. This is going to be awesome. And the first question obviously asked was, how did you come up with this?
So Jonathan, he wanted the origin story of how did this begin. What did you think of the answer, Mike?
I thought that was such a cool story. Ellis tells us a story about how his grandfather had passed and he got an antique desk from him. And within that desk, he found a hidden compartment. And in that hidden compartment was a page describing the Church of Anak. And he started reading about it and researching it and thought to himself, like, wow, this is a really cool story. Like, I want to do something with this.
And apparently something he was completely unaware of about his own family, that someone in his family was possibly attached to this mysterious organization. And Mike, my impression, you just said he found a page. My impression was that it was actually the Book of Anak.
Oh, maybe it was the book. I can't remember. But I know he found something to do with that.
Which led him to want to do something with this mysterious story. It intrigued him that he had never heard of this, and obviously this was of importance because it was hidden in this hidden compartment of his father's personal desk. At the mention of the Church of Anak, Mike, I'm sure you noticed it was fairly subtle in the beginning, but as soon as it was mentioned, several of the audience members, particularly there were a couple of older audience members, who immediately responded with the "Glory be!"
Yeah.
Which I think that was the first signal to all of us in the room that, okay, this is going to get weird.
Why would it be weird?
Or at least intriguing.
You're a part of it.
So we immediately felt that there were, I don't know, either members of the Church of Anak or something among us in the room.
Yeah, and because of those glory be shouts, that's when Jonathan started asking the cult questions. And that's when things got really fun, because as soon as he started talking about it being a cult, people from the audience, well, someone specific in the audience who we'll meet later on, shouted, "It's not a cult, it's an organization."
Yeah, and it was, I don't know, a middle-aged gentleman, kind of he struck a fatherly image to me. Really a striking, guy as far as like the power of his stance, and like he was very, very confident person. And anytime Jonathan Luther, the monitor of the panel, got anywhere near the idea that there was a cult-like vibe to this, he would usually stand up and said, "It's not a cult." He kept re-emphasizing and interrupting to the point where eventually Ellis was sort of the one who said, "Well, come on up," and actually got him. And then he was introduced by the name of Atticus,
which some of us had spoken to early on when we called the office.
I don't think I ever got that. It's like almost everyone I spoke to early on in this experience from the office was female, except for once. So it was I always dealt with the women in the office.
So Atticus is on stage, and the dynamic between him and Ellis was really interesting. It was a lot like he had the attitude of, "Shut up, kid, you don't know what you're talking about, I'll handle it."
Or an attitude of, "You don't owe this panel anything. You don't owe this guy anything who's asking you these insulting questions." And yeah, and he was definitely dominating the conversation at that point.
Yeah, the OOA demands your respect.
Now that this dynamic was present in the panel of tension, of Ellis trying to be polite, the monitor trying to get someone to address the things that have been said about the tension experience, where apparently there are people out there who believe that this is a real dangerous cult that's harming people.
It's not a cult, it's an organization.
Yes, it's an organization that is harming people. My apologies.
You don't want Atticus after you.
No, I do not. So this dynamic started to sort of unravel the panel a bit. And what happened next, there were a couple of interactions that happened very, very quickly. For example, there was a young woman who came forward suddenly, and she basically expressed, I want a taste of this. I want to know more about what it is. I'm an actress. Can I audition? Can I, she just literally just sort of interrupted the panel flow. When she did that, Mike, my thought was, okay, this is someone who's trying to calm the room down because things had gotten so tense on the panel itself. I thought this was a desperate act by this young woman to okay, let me steal the focus and hopefully things will and I'll be able to actually get some answers and maybe they'll like me. That was sort of what was going on in my head. Why are you doing this? And the something that we had failed to mention is that there were two, I don't want to say elderly because they really weren't that old, but two older people sitting up front that were also brought up on stage. And we were informed that they were also part of the OOA, that they were supporters. And they were also there to offer their input. And they also contributed to the tension that was going on the panel. And anytime the moderator took any sort of tact that would be questionable toward the OOA or want some information, if Atticus didn't shut that guy down, the gentleman, and unfortunately I'm drawing a blank on his name, Mike.
I don't remember either.
Things were happening so fast and furious at this point. The elderly woman, she seemed very, very sort of lost and confused. And she was the one.
That's how you took her?
At the beginning.
Because I took her more as devoted.
Well, I thought she was very, very happy to be there. And she absolutely was no, this is great. These people are wonderful. But what I mean by confused is when the monitor questioned it as if it were a cult or a organization that might be doing questionable things, she didn't seem to understand where that accusation came from.
Right.
She was confused, why would anyone question something that's been so wonderful to me? So when this actress that I mentioned, this young woman came forward and said, I want to be a part of this, I want to know more, I want to understand this, that woman, in a very, very kind, motherly fashion, said, absolutely. It's well, here. And the woman stepped down off the stage and led this woman. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, I believe her name was either Trisha or Trista, or I don't... No, I feel bad because we've forgotten a couple of names, but trust me, this was all going down so fast and furious. And I didn't think to take notes along the way.
And I won't make fun of you for being scribe and not taking notes.
Thank you very much for that. So the older woman led this young woman back behind the curtain that was off to the side of the stage. And they disappeared. And while that was going on, another person in the audience, a woman, actually she was sitting right behind our area, stood up and started shouting accusations, saying that when the OOA had some installation or event or something in Oklahoma, that they had actually done harm to her brother, and that they were a fraud, that they
were a joke.
Yeah, they weren't who they say they were representing something else.
She was using filthy language describing them. Yeah,
and she was shut down immediately by everyone at the front of the room. And at that point, I think there were more glory bees. There was a lot of... At this point, people were just yelling things to each other whenever something like that would happen. And then the young woman who claimed to be an actress who wanted a taste of more, suddenly you hear her from behind the curtain where she disappeared, and she comes rushing out, extremely distraught, and followed by the older woman who had led her by the hand backstage. And the older woman was smiling and oh, honey. And it's you weren't ready was sort of the vibe. And the actress was like, what were you doing? What was that? Get your hands away from me. And was very distraught. She ran out of the room.
After she ran out, Russell, one of your old friends, appeared.
I was a little surprised, actually.
I was too. I made a joke on the forums about how he always finds the addresses to parties he's not invited to, but...
And wait, you never said who we're talking about.
He's your old friend. You do the honors.
Tom Barrow.
And who is Tom Barrow?
He is Addison's dad.
Supposed.
Gatekeeper 2's dad. And I not supposed, I firmly believe that is her father. So he came in, actually similar to the Mixer, he came in with this agenda of like just bringing down the meeting, like ending whatever this meeting was. And he did something similar at the mixer where he said, like, yeah, bring out your cell phones. I want you to videotape this. And he started yelling at everyone on the panel that, this was all frauds, that they hurt people. He was screaming at everyone about the OOA that had turned his daughter into someone else, possibly a murderer. At this point, chaos ruled.
Yeah, he handed out pictures of his daughter, and there was a picture of 2 murdering 4 and family pictures and things like that. And
yeah, it was really distressing.
But he pissed me off during all of that.
How so?
I mean, obviously, like, you break into something where you're not invited and you cause a ruckus. Can you describe the ruckus, sir? Sorry. But it really irritated me because he was saying that nobody helped him, and you had your hand out and extended.
Oh, you noticed that?
Yeah, it was right in front of my face.
Okay, yes, it was.
But you were giving that gesture, and to me, it was more of a, like, Tom, I'm here. Like, take my hand. Like, let me help you. It was like a gesture like that.
That's exactly what it was, because I didn't want to stand up, and we talked about this on another podcast. I had the urge at the mixer when he broke in to, like, just scream, like, you're like, this is not the way. like just, bursting into your room and yelling at people is not how you get something done. So what I did is I literally stood up and I just put my hand out in case he looked at me or looked in my direction, that he would see that maybe that there was a friendly face in the crowd, and that I stand with Gatekeeper too. I have tried to be there for Addison.
You and Morgan had calls with him, and it's like, you come in here saying that nobody tried to help, and that's what pissed me off, because knowing you and knowing that you tried, the thing is, when he said nobody here has helped me or tried to help me, he looked directly at you.
Yeah.
And I was like, screw you. Like, are you kidding? He's the one person in this room that has tried to help you.
Oh, and that was a look of, like, the hatred and anger in that look when he looked at me was shocking. So, and I felt like, oh my God, I failed. So, like, it's like, that's, it was like, because I had tried to bring the teddy bear to the Sunday mixer, but we weren't allowed to bring anything in. And I had a note that I wanted to slip to Addison about her family at that mixer, and nobody would let me near Addison at that point. Nobody would let any of us near Addison to talk to her at that mixer. So here I was, and I just made that gesture. And that's so I'm actually shocked, because we haven't talked about that, and you didn't mention that to me. I didn't realize that you had caught me trying to do that. But yeah, I made the gesture, and it seemed futile at that point.
Yeah. And so that just really got to me, because you come in and you criticize everyone for helping you, and you look at the one person that did and still say that, like, piss off, dude.
Yeah. And his implication now that the OOA has turned his daughter into a murderer, there was some heavy stuff that he was throwing around, definitely. And at that point, like, chaos, just everyone in the room was either standing or trying to get out of their seat or yelling and screaming. It was intense. And then it got even more intense.
Yeah. So as he was screaming, the video screen started getting a little wonky. There was static, and you can tell there was a video that was about to be played. And now, after Tom did this, now Sentinel has a video, or they hijacked the video feed, and they played one of their videos. And we couldn't hear anything because Tom was still screaming. But what we did see on the screen is we saw a hooded figure in the dark. Well, that sounds like most of our life. and we saw pictures of people that I guess are really behind it, like people in the film industry. And I think Neil said he recognized someone, or it was confirmed that, like, someone definitely, like, a horror writer, something like that. There was, I think, a Facebook profile of who Ellis Gordon really is. So Ellis Gordon is an actor.
I wasn't sure if it was that or an IMDb page. It looked like one of those things.
Yeah, it was something. And so far, as of this recording, Sentinel has still not released that video. So hopefully that gets released and we can see what exactly they said and who was behind it and,
Well,
and all
to be
that
honest,
thing.
like, and look, I am not on the Sentinel team, but I would love to know what the points were. And also, it's not just that the people were yelling and screaming during the video. And we should also mention, Mike, that as that video began to play, the chaos in the room actually escalated. Ellis Gordon got out. Atticus got out. Like, they started to scramble and flee.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing, and like, look, it's not the fault of Sentinel.
Yes,
like,
it is.
It's not. No, you don't know where I'm going with this. It's not the fault that the video was so hard to understand. This was at a haunt convention. Conventions are known for one thing: bad sound quality in the meeting rooms. So that was part of the reason we couldn't understand. Is literally just it was a couple of tinny speakers in the corner of a conference room in a convention center, not the best acoustics to work with.
With on top of Tom yelling.
Yes, and numerous people yelling. So at that point, and by the way, we also should mention that there were pictures of us,
Yeah.
like of many people in the room. There were flash frames of images of us, the people who had come to support the OOA
Yeah,
that video.
And there was a picture of me that wasn't even my picture. It was a picture from Tal's birthday that he had tagged me in.
Oh, interesting.
Which I thought was wow, they're looking into that.
Yeah, they're definitely following in all leads, but and also to be totally honest, Mike, I can't, I don't know where the picture was from me. I didn't recognize it at all. So because some people have uploaded to YouTube that some of the chaos, that they caught at the very, very end on their cell phones. And in one of those, I found the beginning and I looked at the picture of me, and literally I have no clue where it's from. So
That's so awesome, though.
yeah, oh yeah, it's really intriguing and kind of creepy in a good way.
But with all that being said, and I know I'm still Team FE, but which you will find out the meaning of on the last podcast. But here's the OOA. They're trying to do these cool events for people. And every time they do it, they have to run out the back door because of Tom Barrows. And,
He's a concerned dad.
Yeah, but why try to bust up a party that you're not invited to?
I agree with you. And
because who knows, were there going to be donuts given out after the panel, like the donut mixer? We don't know what could have happened if it wasn't for him. Same thing with the donut mixer. We don't know what was going to happen because True. If we fast forward, this is a bit of a spoiler, but Addison in her diary mentions what was supposed to happen to her, and it didn't sound like a negative thing, despite what we all thought.
Right.
So, Tom, at least wait till the donuts are handed out, man. Come on.
So yeah, at Ascension, the live event that's coming up in a few weeks, donuts, hopefully.
Well, it was funny because there was someone on the forums, it might have been Lucas, who said we should probably wish what we want to make things happen. So I was like, peanut butter M&Ms, have bowls of them and candy for all of us.
So yeah, your path to light is littered with peanut M&Ms.
Peanut butter
M&Ms. Pardon me. That's absolutely true. So so after the panel, obviously we were in confusion, and it's a convention, so they had to clear the room because there was another panel coming up. So people went outside the door and kind of compared notes about what they thought they heard in the video, and just sort of breaking down what we had just witnessed and making plans for the rest of the day at the convention too.
Yeah, and a few of us saw Atticus hanging out by the stairs, so we went and tried to strike up a conversation with him, but he is very anti-people.
Oh, that was very clear.
And he said that.
Yeah, and that's basically we all turned and walked away at that point.
That's my life goal, to be like Atticus. And then I guess Melissa was talking to Tristan, Trisha, one of the T girl. Wait,
Yeah.
No, that sounds even worse. Never mind.
Sorry, we don't have that name.
And she talked to her and got her story. But apparently, as she was talking to her, there was someone taking photos of them talking from the upper level.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and that was kind of weird and sketchy and scary as well.
So that was basically the Tension Experience panel at Scare Los Angeles.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. It didn't hit me until later, but when I was thinking about the panel, it really hit me because I just had this moment of clarity where it's like, holy crap, that whole panel was in game except for when we were answering questions.
Yes.
And it blew my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, kudos to them for doing that. Here's the other thing that I registered. In the last podcast, we talked to some of the out-of-game ramifications of the actions of the Tension Experience, because people were having mixed feelings over violence, over things that appeared in a video. Like, so we kind of talked about that. And Mike and I, we both said, like, don't dumb this down. Like, don't, and like, people be smart. And the reason I bring that up is this panel to me sort of was the line in the sand from the Tension Experience where they said, we are going to mess with you on every level at all times. Everything from the fact that, like, I can't identify the picture of me that wound up in the Sentinel video, the fact that all those people, crying glory be in the audience, like, we were surrounded, we were immersed in this meeting that they absolutely did not break the wall. They, even in the fact that we met this character named Ellis Gordon, which there were conversations later on the forum of like, wait a minute, isn't he a little young? Because somebody said to me, like, I totally don't buy him. I totally do not buy, like, that was horrible casting. That was, and I said, wait a minute. Like, no, it's not. Look at it this way. He's talking about some rich antique desk, like beautiful antique piece of furniture where he found this book. Like, doesn't that speak possibly to money? And I said, look at him as possibly, what if the background of this is he is ludicrously wealthy? Like, what if he comes from money and this is all a game to him? And they immediately went, oh, that even makes it weirder because that means he's just playing with all of us.
Well, and here's another way to look at it. Look at all the OOA members that were there. They were all older.
Yes. If
they want to recruit the younger kids and like the younger generation, it's not going to happen with people like Atticus.
No.
It's going to happen with, a fairly good-looking younger guy.
Yeah, who's out there trying to creatively express himself and create something and become an entrepreneur. And yeah, absolutely.
What if that's not it at all and they just hired him as the face of the company and he's just a PR person trying to get people more involved?
Again, that's them messing with us.
Oh, no, I know. But I'm just saying awesome? It's another theory, but hell yeah, it is. And going along with messing with us, a photo on Instagram appeared of me, Debbie, Susie, Thomas, and Derek all just talking outside. They were probably 3 feet away from us. We had no idea anybody took our picture, which kind of worries me at that point, because it's like, if we're
all of you were that unaware.
Yeah, exactly. But they posted it, and they posted it within minutes of that conversation happening.
Wow.
Because all of a sudden we looked on Instagram and we were just walking in the doors when we saw it. And it's like, holy crap. They just took a picture of us like 5 minutes ago.
Right.
And we had no idea.
Yeah. So I applaud the fact that, like, that panel to me was this, like, I'm going to use their phrase, it was the ringing of a bell.
Right. And
like, this is going to mess with you, and that is our intention.
See, to me, it wasn't even a panel anymore. It was an immersive experience.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And it was pretty damn cool on many levels.
Hell yeah, it was.
That was fun. Sometimes it's fun to be messed with.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what Ascension is.
I'm really curious.
So what Ascension is the event that is happening in September, starting in September, and it's going to be at least 2 hours. And they keep saying that it's going to be your choices that direct you through it, which is going to be interesting. And for more information on the Tension Experience, check them out on the web at thetensionexperience.com, on Facebook, The Tension Experience, on Instagram, _tension_experience, and on Twitter, _tension_exp.
And Mike just mentioned their Facebook page. I highly recommend, especially if you're kind of new to the Tension Experience, we're talking about this as if everyone's up to speed and part of it and has been following along. If you're fairly new to the Tension Experience, and trust me, go on the forums. There's people joining literally hourly, it seems, right now. Go to their Facebook page, and you will find posts that give you more clues and hints. And they actually, posted a flyer for the live event that is coming up called Ascension, where they actually give you a little explanation of it. And if you go to their ticketing website, there is more information there. We're just sort of just assuming hey, we're on for the ride, let's go forward. But check out their Facebook page. There's a lot of stuff and a lot of really cool stuff in the Facebook page.
After the Tension panel, we started walking the floor, and we saw a very, very familiar face. And that is Bob from the Virus Escape Room. And he told us that he has a mini game at his booth. And what did we do? We went and played it.
Yes. This was so much fun.
It really was. And it was very different from typical escape rooms or mini escape rooms at conventions, because we had to compete against one another. And it was for two people, and each person had the same exact setup, but whoever made it out first was the winner.
I so looked forward to the opportunity to actually competing against you one-on-one with the same puzzles, especially after the whole birthday cipher thing where I overthought it for months and months and months. I was like, you have no idea, as I was walking into that, because they sort of blindfolded us and led us into a little hidden area behind the booth at the convention. And they basically, there's a little recording and it says go, and then you attempt at the same time to solve the exact same three puzzles, but you cannot see each other, and you don't know how quickly the other person is going. And I so look forward to actually competing directly against you with the same puzzles.
Yeah.
It was fun.
It totally was.
Because we've never had that opportunity, really.
No.
And we are slightly competitive.
No. Why would you say I'm competitive when I give you crap every time you try to ask me to tell you something inside an escape room? It's like, no, we only have a certain amount of time. I'll tell you later.
Mike is slightly competitive, people. So Mike, how did we do?
You beat me.
Yeah.
I can admit it. I have no shame.
Okay, but all right, first of all, that surprised the heck out of me that I actually did beat you, because I was not expecting to at all. And as I was going through it, I got one puzzle farther than you, and at that point I was like, oh, this is where Mike is going to kick my butt. Because I was looking at some visuals that I didn't quite understand. However, what I found interesting was when you tell me later what messed you up, it was exactly what you had said to me about, sometimes you have to look outside the box, sometimes you have to rethink what you're doing, is because I know for a fact that you actually did figure out what you needed to know.
Yeah.
And it was sort of a physical thing, a visual thing.
Yeah, I had the right answer, and
Absolutely
I knew what to do, but for some reason, I just couldn't find how to enter that.
Right.
And that's what I got stuck on.
Yeah, you had to enter an answer someplace to move on. And when you told me that later, I was like, oh, that's interesting that and I don't mean this, I don't mean this is in a mocking way at all, but like, wow, even Mike has those moments.
Oh yeah.
It was like, because I always think that you're like it just makes sense to you at all times.
No, never. I just play that on TV.
Oh, okay. You're messing with me constantly. No, but no, it was also a lesson for me of like, oh wow, okay, that's interesting. That I almost immediately saw what needed to be done, and the fact that you kind of glitched on it was really interesting to me. Yeah. So, and also Bob from the Virus, thanks so much for such an entertaining game, and I'm sure that they will be doing other conventions over the course of the Virus existing, and this is done in a way that they can change out some of the puzzles. One of the puzzles in particular I found really difficult because there's like a little visual confusion involved. Check out at conventions if they do this. Like, absolutely, play this game if you ever have the opportunity.
Yeah, definitely go sign up for it. He had time slots, so if the next convention you go to, they're there. Make sure you get there quick and sign up.
Yeah.
And Bob was gracious enough to give us a little interview about the virus, and he's also in the blackout experiments along with Russell, so we talk a little bit about that. So here is our interview with Bob.
We are standing here at the virus booth at Scare LA. We're talking to Bob Globerman.
Globerman's fine.
Did I pronounce that correctly?
It's fine. Globerman, it's Glauberman, but we are people, swarthy people who come from Russia and Poland. Who knows? Who knows what it is? But Globerman or Glauberman works.
Well, it seems every convention and everything that you do, you have a different name anyway. So.
That's kind of true. That's kind of true.
Your name is one of those that gets misspelled a lot.
Yes, it does. You notice that.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. Oh, is that true?
Russell gets misspelled all the time.
One S, two S's,
you got it.
one L, two L's. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, your name is still pronounced the same. It's not like Bob Guberman or Bob Glauberman or Bob Gluberman or Guberman or.
So for Blackout, for the Blackout panel at Scare LA, where they give you the little press passes, they spelled my name without the L and they spelled it Gooberman. But kids are cruel guys, and when I was growing up, I just got teased mercilessly. Glooby, Glooberman, Gooberman, Gloobjube. They called me everything.
Okay, Gloobtube? I would not have thought of that one.
Neither would I.
All right, let's talk about the virus.
Please.
You created the virus escape room.
I did.
And please tell us about that. It's been up and running for a while. Mike and I have done it, enjoyed it.
Excellent.
You have aspects to that room which I think is very unique. Would you want to talk about a little bit about the
I would
beginning?
love to. Thanks for interviewing me, and thanks for coming. I listen to your guys' podcast all the time, and
Thank you.
Your taste and your sensibility and your take on things, I really appreciate. So this is high praise. My partners and I, and Larry Toffler is another partner who's over here, but this is a podcast, so you can't see him. We also have an all-star production cast of people behind the scenes who put together the virus room. We went to almost every escape room in town since Los Angeles, which is now a hub of the global escape room community, came on the scene just about 2 years ago. And I fell in love with the escape room art form. And we tried to put together an immersive experience unlike any other. We wanted you to feel like you were a character in a movie. In this case, there's a virus ravaging the nation, and you have to come up with an antidote. You're a scientist, and we wanted to transport you to a military laboratory. So we strap on some virtual reality, and we have Hollywood special effects, moving walls that come in as the 60 minutes to get out of the room is ticking down to come in and crush you. We wanted to make you feel like you were Indiana Jones in one of these rooms and you were being trapped and you can't get out.
Which actually, the moving wall was something that I talked about afterwards with our group. I actually thought I was crazy because I thought, no, there's no way that happened. And then the other people in my group went, no, it happened. It actually did happen. Like, I thought I was imagining that. I thought it was just really tense. So, but yeah, that's a very clever device.
Cool.
So,
Thanks,
now, here at Scare LA, you have a really cool little mini game.
Thanks. So what we tried to do here is in the virus in Burbank, and by the way, the name of the company is Get the F Out. So the virus, presented by Get the F Out, is a military laboratory where you have to come up with an antidote. You are the best and brightest doctors in the world. How do you choose these doctors? Well, that's where the mini game comes in. The mini game is an experiment. It's a test where we take two people and put them in identical rooms. And it's an experiment to see who can get out of the room first. The mini game takes about 5 minutes. It's all science-based. All of our clues are science-based. I don't want to spoil anything.
Please don't.
But it has to do with, we never give instructions. It all has to do with logic, where you are in the experiment. And even though prior knowledge is something that's frowned on in the escape room community, prior knowledge can come in. You don't need prior knowledge to solve this, but some scientific prior knowledge can give you a leg up.
It's more like a hint.
A hint, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my God, I think I just figured out a clue I didn't get.
Uh-huh.
Mike and I competed against each other, and actually I, for once, actually beat Mike at a puzzle.
Oh, snap.
But the funny thing is when we came over here, you weren't here earlier, so I was saying I'm going to steal an I Escape sticker just to spite you.
Oh, you bastard. Oh, you bastard.
He's honest. He didn't do that.
I want that back. Don't sell it on eBay.
Oh, that's interesting. So I have to talk to Mike after this to find out what he just realized, because I want to know, because I actually did. It's multiple things that you have to figure out to unlock locks.
Correct.
And you're in competition with another person,
Yes.
which is really fun.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's something that Mike and I both enjoyed. It had a good time, definitely.
Good. I'm so glad.
So is this something that you'll be taking to other conventions?
Yes, it will.
Excellent.
The beauty of this game is that it is very changeable and mutable, and all the puzzles can be changed. Our virus experience in Burbank is, I don't want to. I don't want this. It's the perfect game as it is. It can't really be changed. Everything leads to each other in a Rube Goldberg sort of domino effect. This is not. This can be changed. All the puzzles can be changed out, and so we can have a new experience at every convention. One of the things that we are working on is we are working on a second room. All of our rooms are very elaborately thought out and put together, and we have an all-star team, an all-star production team from Not Scary Farm, from 9 Inch Nails sound design, the producer of Smashing Pumpkins. We have a lot of behind-the-scenes people, a virtual reality person, and so it takes a lot of time to get these guys together. What we are going to do for our next room is something having to do with the movie Inception, yet not so much so that we get sued. And it will be a trip inside the mind, inside a dreamscape. I don't want to give you too many spoilers, but one of the things that you can look forward to in our flavor, our escape room flavor, is we want to be the room that morphs. So the closing walls in the virus, if you remember the movie Inception, there was a sequence in Inception that it took place in a hallway that you might remember. We want to replicate that. So we want to be the room that morphs, and that's what you can look forward to. Hopefully it will open sometime this year.
So one of the things that you've done that I haven't seen anyone else do is, number one, Russell mentioned the moving walls, the virtual reality, and I love the concept of going head-to-head with people. Based on the reactions of going head-to-head, do you ever see that making that into its own standalone room?
That's a great idea.
I want 10%.
Well, I'm sorry?
I want 10%.
So the problem is you get 10% of very, very little, because escape rooms have to make their money back, and so one of the things that they try and do is put as many people in the room as possible. That has been done in some rooms that I've been to with negative effects, because the more people you put in a room, the more cramped it gets. People don't get to experience other puzzles. So when we came up with 8 people for the virus, we think that's the perfect amount. We don't want to go more than that, although we could. The problem with a head-to-head experience, unless we make identical rooms, which we could, right here, in a convention space, doing a mini game where you can have one person going head to head against one person, we're not losing any money really. So we could do, say, 10 people against 10 people. It doesn't really have the same sort of thrill of going head to head against somebody else, and the trash talking that comes afterwards. You suck, you suck. I don't know. Did you trash talk at the end? You suck, you suck.
He knows better.
Okay, very good. So yeah, the head-to-head experience is definitely in the back of our mind. I think it's down the road a ways.
On top of doing an escape room, you and Russell.
The experiment is over. The experiment
Someone just
is over.
escaped.
Congratulations. Someone has just conquered the mini game.
And you heard the excitement from everybody. So also doing you do escape rooms, you're also a fan of extreme haunts.
Love extreme haunts. And there is overlap. There is an extreme overlap.
Oh, yeah. And you had mentioned at the beginning of this about the blackout panel.
Yeah.
So yeah, you are also in the blackout experiments.
Yes,
with Russell.
I'm in with Russell. Russell and I became good friends because of the movie.
So Russell and I always talked about it, and I know his feelings on the movie and things like that. But
right.
I'd like to get how you feel about everything so far.
So the movie, I really like the movie a lot. I think that the movie became something different than a simple documentary where it explains what blackout is, who are so I thought it could go two ways. It could either go, these are weird people, let's mock these weird people, like in Trekkies, or it could be something like what is Blackout, an expose of Blackout. The movie didn't do either of those things, and the movie was basically an exploration into Blackout's psychological impact on a couple of individuals. Russell was featured prominently in the movie, and he's the star of the movie. It's mostly his story. So I love the movie. I think that was a smart choice. I would have liked more of me, of course, being the narcissist that I am. Go ahead, Russell.
Well, I was just going to say, the one thing that has come up, a couple of people have recognized me here at the convention, and people who have seen the movie. One thing that was said to me is that you and I complement each other in the movie because we both overthink it a bit.
Yes.
We both hit it. We both go into it, and it hits us at a very emotional level.
Yes.
But we observe it and we process it very differently.
Totally different.
So somebody actually came up to me and said it was really interesting listening to you and then listening to me because I have a sort of a more emotional take on the experience.
Yes, you do.
And you have more a clinical, and you also have a spouse who I think assists you in your examination of it. So I just have good friends like Mike that I go like, oh my God.
So Russell and Mike, if you buy the movie, as you should on iTunes, if you buy the movie, it comes with special features. So what's fascinating to me is Russell and Abel, who are two participants in the movie, when they go out of one of the off-season, you run out of the off-season blackout with rubber gloves on your hands, pretty much naked from the waist down, and Russell and Abel are stripping off their gloves like they're stunned, like they just got shot in the neck with a dart, They're just stunned, and they have just sallow expressions on their faces, and it's like, what did we just do? Now, if you watch the special features, I've got 2 minutes in the special features, 2 minutes and 50 seconds, where you see me running out of that same sequence, giggling, laughing and laughing and laughing, and it is such an extreme difference from these two guys. I wish they had put that in the movie so you could see these two guys coming out of blackout going, oh my God. And Hannah Kaplan is the other one who is like going, what did I just do? What did I just do? And if you just juxtapose that with me, who's just laughing his ass off.
Yeah, I really thought that the bonus material of you is hysterically funny
it's
for that
funny.
reason exactly.
Yeah.
And I think Hannah in the movie has a reaction that is literally halfway between you and me.
Right. I agree. So I love Russell's reaction. And I think it's valid, and I think my reaction is totally valid as well. But I do overthink things. I think Russell overfeels things, which is different. And I think that both are valid reactions. I think blackout is art, and I think that people respond to art in completely different ways. So Russell and I complement each other. We are on absolute opposite ends of the spectrum, and Abel is off the spectrum because he tapped out, because Abel thought they went too far and didn't appreciate it anymore. And I whenever we go to a panel like this today, I mock him, but I tease with love. But Russell and I think, appreciate it in different ways, and that's cool.
Yeah, Abel and I have talked about the movie as well, and we do have very differing opinions.
Yeah.
But also, I think that touches on a bigger thing. You mentioned that there's overlap between escape rooms and the haunt community as far as interest in things that turn us on and excite us.
Yes.
And I think Abel is just like on a different wavelength than we are.
Yeah.
And like, look, Blackout has done things that I have walked away going, okay, I know for me that was a step over a line.
Yeah.
And Blackout is sensitive enough to know when they've done
right.
that. So, and I just think I think the participants they chose to feature in the Blackout Experiments documentary, I think we really do complement all of us, each other very well because we do have very different reactions.
Let me just say one thing from what you said. Abel goes, they stepped out of the line. Yeah. You go, okay, that's not cool. They crossed the line. I'm going, Yeah, they crossed a line. Huh? Why did they cross that line? What were they trying to do in crossing that line?
Actually, I have a similar reaction to you, but it takes me longer to get there.
Right.
I get angry first.
Yeah.
And then I walk away like, okay, wait a minute, let me overthink this.
Right.
Let me overfeel this.
Yeah.
And then let's get back to it. And look, I've I have gone through many blackout shows, and it is a different emotional reaction almost every time.
Totally. And I never feel like I am personally being humiliated. I am personally that there's a personal affront coming. I'm always like, this is fun, and why are they doing this? And I never take it as a personal affront.
That's interesting, because there was one show and there was one very specific scene where I felt that cross of the line that you just mentioned. That I felt like, oh, wait a minute, like this is the personal. I really felt that. And afterwards I came out of the show and I was so upset by it that the staff actually came over and they talked to me about it.
Yes, I know the one you're talking about.
And and look, people, if you go online and research blackout, you'll probably figure out the scene, because multiple people had very negative reactions and went online and very publicly let blackout know.
Yes. Yeah.
So I had the opposite reaction. I went online and I defended. Before I had done the show, I was like, wait, I'm not going to judge a book until I read it.
Right.
And afterwards, like that scene did cross a line for me. I have a question for Mike, because Mike is in the documentary very briefly.
Yes.
You see Mike going through one sequence in the documentary in a blackout show, and you see him, he's in the group where we discuss blackout. Mike, how do you feel about that scene in particular? It's like, because I don't, I know it didn't hit you the way it hit me, but how do you feel? Do you feel ever like a personal thing with blackout? Like, comment on what Bob just brought up, please.
I don't get emotional when it comes to that thing. We always joke about I have no feelings or anything like that. So, I mean, the thing is, like, you want me to shoot someone? Like, okay. Like, it's like, okay, you're a stranger. I have no emotional bind to you, despite what may have happened in the previous room. And that's another thing, like, because I was in that scene, I was so out of it, just because it's like, wait, what's happening? And that's part of my derpiness. But if
whatness?
My derpiness.
Derpiness.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if I had realized what was going on, because the thing is, I just stood there like a dead fish. I was just like, what's happening? But yeah, like, I don't get the way that you do.
But I think you just, in my opinion, contradicted yourself a little bit, because I think the reason your derpiness came into play is because where that scene takes place is after about 25 minutes of you examining what could be an abusive relationship which you have a hand in. So do you think your derpiness is part of an emotional reaction to that?
Not at all, because I never saw it as 25 minutes of watching an abusive relationship.
This is fascinating, Bob. This is exactly what you touched on.
Right.
It's like everyone approaches this from a completely different angle.
Right.
So, and I want to bring it back to escape rooms a little bit, in the fact that escape rooms can have this same effect.
Yes.
And what is exciting me about escape rooms, and Mike and I have touched on this a little bit, and we've talked about it, in the fact that I think there is an emotional capacity in escape rooms for storytelling, for dramatic purposes, that is just now being tapped into.
Yes, it's an art form.
And I point to something like The Basement, because that is a more emotional, darker experience.
I agree. Let's throw Crossroads in there.
Yes, absolutely. I think Crossroads has the same vibe going on, and that they're starting to explore that territory.
Yeah.
See, and I think that's where the big difference between you and I are, because, like, you said emotional in escape rooms, and I'm thinking, like, what the hell are you talking about? It's like I go and I play a game. Like, I'm not thinking about, like, for The Basement, for example, the actor that may or may not be there. Spoilers. I have no emotional attachment. If there's any emotion, it's anger, because it's like, just give me the effing clue already.
Let me throw one thing in there. Let me just jump in. And then I'm sorry, I'll throw it back to you. So I just did a mini game, Countdown. Countdown is another awesome escape room, which is great. They have one in a coffin. And have you done it?
No.
Did you do it? Oh, guys, you got to do it. I just did this, and that was an emotional reaction for me. It's just you in the coffin, and the experience was palpable. It was panic. I panicked. and it was frickin' awesome. I do think escape rooms are an art form. I do think that people are people like Basement and Crossroads and Countdown and a lot of other people are reinventing this art form and touching it in various different ways. It's not just it's in the same way that I think we can agree that video games are an art form, right? Yes. So I think that escape rooms are video games without the television. So okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just got
keep going.
Okay, so
go ahead.
So I do think that that emotions can be tapped in escape room. The fact that you don't feel any emotions just means that you are a psychopath and a sociopath.
Probably.
Yeah, okay.
And you see, I don't buy that. I know Mike well enough to know that I know he has emotions. I think he's in complete denial. So,
anyways.
And let me throw Escapedom in here. Let me throw 60 out. Let me throw 60 out in here, which is also a tremendously affecting company. They've got 4 games, 2 of which are in the west side of Los Angeles. And look at this. We have the owner right here.
Oh, I am the operations manager, but it is okay because I am the face of the company. Correct. So that is that. Bob, thank you for the intro.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
And if you could see this face right now, it has a bunch of snakes on it.
This is Damien. This is Damien.
Yeah, I'm Damien, everyone. And what am I speaking on right? What is this? Is this a podcast or
My Haunt
cool?
Life.
My Haunt. Oh, we spoke.
Yeah, we did.
You were at Midsummer Scream. Yeah. Oh, you guys were the very last group.
Let me just say one thing. 60 Out has 2 scary games since we're now at Scare LA. They have the Senator Payne room, which is one of the best rooms I've done, and they also have a new one, Dr.
Psycho. Dr. Psycho. So,
can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, a little bit about it. So I'll just say that this doctor, who also happens to be a serial killer, you are a team, I guess a team of law enforcement, members of law enforcement that go into his lair and have to, you get trapped in there and then you gotta escape. So, I mean, that's how these things go, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's really fun. It's got a couple of like twists to it. So, things that obviously you won't expect. This guy hasn't done it yet. Either of you guys, I don't think.
No spoilers.
Yeah, it's in Hollywood, so come check it out if you get a chance. Yeah, we opened up a new Hollywood location, so and more to come. We love these things, and awesome. This is so new being here.
Yeah, 60. So again, 60 Out is one of these people who are expanding the art form. So I dig these guys.
I need to play their game. So you talk.
See you, man. That was Damien.
So, Bob, thank you
thank
for
you, Mike.
everything. Do you have any final thoughts or any more shout-outs?
Come to the Virus Room. The Virus Room presented by Get the F Out, and we'd love to see you.
And where can people find out more information about that?
Go to www.getthefoutroom.com. That's www.getthefoutroom.com.
And it's just the letter F.
Just the letter F. Just the letter F. If there are kids listening, it stands for fun.
Perfect. Thank you again.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Russell.
So thanks again, Bob. You are an amazing human being, and we love you. And for more information on the virus escape, on the web, it's getthefoutroom.com. On Facebook, Get the F Out Room. On Instagram, Get the F Out Room. And on Twitter, The Virus Escape.
After that, we moved on to the sort of mini haunt section of Scare LA.
Yes.
And we were able to get into Creep.
I was so looking forward to this. This is probably the one this and Heretic were probably the ones I was so excited for.
Yeah, Creep. I loved Creep last year, and I really wanted to know what they were going to do in a convention setting, and they're just so unique. Their vision, their take on things, like I loved this thing.
I did too. It was so creative, and it was such a good teaser and a taste of what's to come without spoiling anything.
Absolutely. And also, I want to give them credit for something else, which in a haunt convention scenario, in Scare LA is this Halloween haunt convention, there are crowds. And kudos to Creep for designing a little mini experience that kept the flow through this thing was so quick and so fast, and yet you absolutely got the full experience.
Yeah, and you didn't ever feel like you were conga lining or you had to wait for someone, because you didn't really have to.
And if you did, nothing was ruined. Does that
right.
make, yeah.
Yep.
which that's Mike and I have talked about conga lines in events before, because what happens is you see what happens to the person 4 people in front of you, so everything is lost.
So you may be wondering how this was achieved. Well, you basically got sent through a peep show.
You stepped into the creep experience, and you literally were walking around a very large box with peepholes. So you would walk a few feet and then lean down and look into a circle that was like in the wall. And behind it, there was either a tableau, there were quotes on walls that you could read, there were like art installation type things of a very creepy vibe, and then you would move on to another peephole, and then you were actually spying on people.
And the cool thing about some of the quotes that you mentioned, they were all about darkness and things like that, like about how there's beauty in the darkness, and
also, if there is light in me, there is also darkness in me, and that we're not complete without both. And all of the quotes had that vibe to them. So you walked around this box from peephole to peephole to peephole and just looking in on little vignettes.
And Russell, you may have noticed that at one point I was waiting for you instead of just walking.
Yes.
And can you talk about why I waited for you?
Because you enjoy watching me get scared.
There you go. So what happened?
Well, like I said, you're walking from peephole to peephole. So even though the flow was very fast, every now and then, you turn a corner, and in the peephole, the next peephole you were supposed to look through, there'd be one person there looking through it. So I just hung back a few feet, so I didn't get a glimpse of anything or see their reaction, and then that person would move forward. And you had done that. You were in front of me at that point, and I was still looking at the last peephole. I looked up, and you were at a corner. I didn't realize you were waiting on me because you were at a corner. I thought you were waiting for someone in front of you that I couldn't see around the corner.
Even better.
So I totally did not suspect this, and I, leaned down and looked at the peephole you had just passed, and nothing. It was complete blackness. And then suddenly an actor turned on a flashlight, and he was just on the other side of the screen of the peephole, and he sort of growled at me, and I actually screamed. It was so simple. It was like literally the fact that, I'm looking through this peephole, and then suddenly an actor turns on a light, and he's literally 2 inches from my face.
It was so awesome. And I knew that would get you.
Yes. I'm an easy get.
And I think that actor was actually Justin, who's behind Creep. So
really?
Yeah. So kudos to you, Justin.
Totally got me. Totally got me. And again, like the visual style that they are developing, granted, this will only be their second year on the haunt scene in Los Angeles. Like they are people to watch.
Yeah, this teaser did its job. It got me so much more excited to see what they have in October.
And I have absolutely no idea what to expect from them.
Yeah.
But I'm so intrigued and so fascinated by what they presented. I'm truly, truly, truly excited.
And for more information on Creep, you can check them out on the web at creepla.com, on Facebook, Creep Los Angeles, and on Instagram, Creep Los Angeles, and Twitter, Creep Los Angeles.
After we did Creep, we had signed up to do the next installment of Shine On Collective's Devoted. This one was called Devoted Together. This was sort of a mini scene, which was offering you a preview of an upcoming show in September.
Yeah, we talked about the first in this series on the Midsummer Scream podcast. And so this was the second part, like Russell mentioned. And it's going to a weird place at this point.
Weird, creepy, dark,
possibly stalkerish.
That was the S that was about to say, but
yeah.
I was like, and I had to the reason I checked myself was like, well, she's telling you stuff, but she isn't threatened, but it's got a threatening vibe. You walked into a very small space, and actors came out, Kara or Kara, depending on how you'd pronounce that. And she comes out and she tells you a story, a very disturbing little story.
Yeah, she told you a story about her first love and the sparrow and how she drank its blood.
Yeah. See, as a child, found a bird, which she didn't understand why it wasn't moving, apparently. And she brought it home and held a little girl's tea party with it, and the tea became blood. And then she offered you a taste.
So I drank sparrow blood.
Yes, so did I. Now, along the way, I will say this. She also, Mike, you did not quite get this treatment, but I was wearing a short sleeve shirt, and she sort of opened up my arms, and as she was telling me the story, about love and loss and the themes she was writing the words on my arms in, I don't know what it was. It wasn't really ink. At first I thought it was lipstick, but it wasn't that either, because it stayed on the entire rest of the day, which I have to laugh because it was also a great marketing ploy for Shine On Collective.
Oh, yeah.
All day long, because she went to town on me. You saw me later.
Yeah.
Like, both of my arms were completely covered in bloody hearts and the words like cut and death and love and just... And all day long, people were like, "What happened to you?" And I was like, "Oh, check out Devoted Together over at the Shine On Collective booth." So yeah, it was a very funny, clever marketing ploy, but it was very kind of creepy as she was marking me as she was delivering that monologue. Definitely creepy.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if it was because I had tattoos and you wouldn't be able to really see it or read it.
That's true. My guess would be that as well.
Yeah.
So she could have written it on your face.
That's true. Maybe next time. But since it was your idea, you should probably get it first.
No,
to test it.
Because you have tattoos, I think you should get it on
No,
your
but
face.
I don't want to take your credit. It was your idea. So Shine On Collective, please write on Russell's face.
Shine On Collective, please write on Mike's face.
But one of the things I wanted to mention is that in between Midsummer Scream and Scare LA, if you signed up and did their show at Midsummer Scream, you gave them your email address. In between Midsummer Scream and Scare LA, you got an email from Kara, which basically said, "I'm going to be here, find me at this booth," kind of thing, which I thought was really clever that they did that within that character.
Right, and continuing on with that, after Scare LA, I got a Facebook invitation from her.
And Instagram, too.
So, like, she is now a social media presence as this person who lives inside the Devoted show, and she's reaching out for communication.
Yeah, and I just want to say this because so they can hear it, but people are super, super stoked on that.
That kind of interaction, I think, it's really fascinating, and it adds such a personal touch to any show. And the fact that they're starting so early, I think that's awesome. I'm really intrigued by what they're doing.
And for more information on Devoted and the Shine On Collective, you can find them on the web at shineoncollective.com, on Facebook, The Shine On Collective, and on Twitter, Shine On Shows. After we did Devoted, we did another immersive experience that was also at Midsummer Scream and had a different show at Scare LA, and that is Screenshot Productions' The Rope. And there was something different about this one. If you went in, you got a token, and we found out that there were 4 tokens to collect. And the 4 tokens will give you different scenes in the upcoming production of The Rope happening in October. So if you have all 4 tokens, you are going to get different interactions with those characters if you give them the token than someone that doesn't give them the token, which I thought was a super cool and ambitious idea.
Yeah, utterly fascinating. And here at the convention, you were able to go back, if you had the time, you could go back to the little mini haunt show that they had at Scare LA, and if you had 1 token from your first trip, you showed it to them, and they would put you on a different path where you would collect a 2nd token, and then a 3rd token, and then a 4th token. Mike, how many times did you go through?
I went 4.
You did?
I got to collect them all.
Wow. I literally did not have the time because every time I went back and checked in, the line was just too long, and I was scheduled to do something else already. So I only gathered 1 token, and I was so disappointed because when I finally went back, the demand was so high they'd cut the line off.
Yeah, and again, kudos to Nick and Screenshot and his crew, because both conventions that happened a week apart, first of all, there were 2 different shows, which I can only assume is hell to put together. But second, word of mouth for their shows, amazing. Like there was a time that I went down there during Saturday and the line went down the back, up the stairs, across the stairs, and down that hallway across the stairs as well, and back again. And it was just like, this is awesome. Like I'm so happy to see people like that successful.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy at their success. But also that was the reason I only got one token. So just because of timing.
There are 4 different paths. And which path did you get?
I want to say the cranium token was the way that some of us were describing it by the end of Saturday.
That was probably my favorite one.
Oh, interesting. It was intense.
It was intense and it was creepy. And
for me, the reason was you encountered a woman who, again, scared the hell out of me at the beginning of the experience. And because you're wandering through the dark and she creeps up and like appears right in front of you. The creepy thing was the way she was grabbing, like sort of pinching the back of my neck and sort of massaging it and then poking pressure points back there. And it was just because that's a very dominating feeling to have someone like grab you by the back of the neck. And she was whispering this very creepy monologue sort of in my ear while controlling me with her other hand. It was like, and like she held a light with her other hand. So like it was very intense and very intimate. I loved the little scene that I got.
Yeah, it was definitely my favorite.
Cool.
And the other scenes were started out similar. What happens is you walk in and you are holding onto a rope. And the person that leads you in tells you not to let go for anything. And you will start walking at a certain time. There's an audio cue for you to start walking. And when you start walking, you're in complete darkness. You have a blindfold on your head. And then all of a sudden, someone will grab you or stop you. And then that's when your scene began. So you can imagine that and imagine what we just said about Creep, where Russell got scared. Imagine Russell walking in the dark, blindfolded, holding onto a rope. And then all of a sudden, this woman just grabs him by the neck.
Yeah. It was creepy. It was scary. In all the good ways.
And actually, there is one scene that happened to me that I didn't tell you about. I just never had the opportunity. And it was one of the coolest things of the whole convention to me.
Really?
Yeah. So the last time I went in, and our good friend Nick, he was the one that leads you in and signs the waiver. So he comes out to me. And he has me put my blindfold on, and he takes me like he's going to lead me inside. All of a sudden, he just starts running with me around the bottom floor of the convention, starts spinning me around, all while I'm being blindfolded.
Wow. And
he's leading me and taking me down the aisles and turning me around and finally coming back. Then he actually puts me into the rope. And then he puts me in backwards, and I have to follow the rope backwards.
That's awesome.
And it was such a cool, like, little extra thing that meant so much because it was so cool. Like, it was so fun. And I probably had that stupid smile that you talk about while he was pushing me down the floor. But yeah, I said thank you at the convention, but thank you again, Nick. That was amazing and awesome of you to do.
They do have a show coming up, too.
They have 2 shows.
Yes. How could I forget?
The 2 shows they have coming up are Bardo Thodol, which they did a teaser of at Midsummer Scream, and then also The Rope, which they did the teaser of now that we're talking about. And both tickets are on sale right now. Bardo Thodol is in September, and The Rope is in October. And you can find more information about that on the web at screenshot.productions, on Facebook, screenshot.immersions, on Instagram, screenshot.productions, and on Twitter, screenshot.art.
After that, we went back to another area of mini haunts on the convention floor. The Scare LA convention was sort of hosted in 2 mirror buildings. One had a huge convention floor, and then the other one had a basement area which held everything from panel discussions in classrooms and some of the virtual reality experiences. So we went back over to the main floor and back to the main big mini haunt area, and we encountered Heretic.
Yeah, you have probably heard us talk about Heretic in the past. The most recent one I did was Vanish, and that was maybe
almost 3/4 of a year ago.
Yeah. But because of how tough it is to get into Heretic, that's the last one I actually could get a ticket for. So it was
And
really.
I haven't done a show with Heretic in over a year. Rituals was the last show that I did with them.
Okay. Oh, I remember you were a later date than a later time slot.
Yeah,
than
I
I
was later. Yeah, we didn't go through Rituals together. I went through a later time slot.
Right. So it was really cool that they actually had something that could wet our whistle for the time being, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first heard that Heretic would be there and doing a mini haunt, I kind of had that thought process of how the hell are they going to do this?
Well, it's interesting. I had at another convention, I had encountered Heretic in a mini haunt format, and I actually didn't think that it represented Heretic very well. It was a little too out of focus visuals. They messed with your eyesight a little bit by masks, and I just didn't feel like it was. It didn't feel like Heretic or the Heretic shows I had gone through previous to that. So I was really interested to see what they did at Scare LA, and this felt like a Heretic experience to me.
Yeah, definitely. And they did have two versions. They had a more extreme version for the people that he knows have been through Heretic and can handle it, and then he had kind of a teaser of what could happen, I guess you could say, which I think was really smart because it gave the new fans something. It also gave the people that have been through it something that they expect.
Right.
You know, so it was really cool to have both versions there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know I got the second version, comparing it with notes to the people with the Death Pass and things like that. But what did you do?
Well, it was interesting because the one thing I said, because I knew that I was definitely meeting other people later that day at the convention. So my one request was no liquids because I didn't want to be covered in anything bloody,
right?
Because I didn't have a change of clothes, and so that was my one thing is no liquids. And so I think they took it fairly tame with me.
Okay.
And also, I haven't been through a Heretic show in over a year. And I had a little bit of a safety issue with them in the past. So this was sort of a reintroduction.
Okay.
So I think they were probably a little cautious because I did have a safety issue in one of their shows.
Understandable. And then we did see how Jake looked.
So yeah, Jake was covered in red stuff.
Yeah. So going through it, how do you feel now?
It was intense. They definitely got very physical with me, which was like, I enjoy that. Physically challenging, immersive stuff. And they had a couple of characters sort of, I want to say, pin me. And I don't necessarily want to give away exactly what happened, but
right.
I was held in place and threatened. Well, let's put it that way.
Okay.
And did that happen to you?
My mind kind of goes off when I go through these things.
So it was definitely, well, I think the reason, and sometimes I have that reaction as well, but the reason it didn't happen this time is because I encountered two women who were obviously not getting along well, let's just say. And then I moved into another room and I was sort of grabbed and pinned, and then multiple characters came forward to threaten me. So it was a very intense, short experience, and like if you've listened to the podcast before, Mike knows this about me. One of my sort of trigger things is the being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and having something bad happen just because of circumstance. That's exactly what this was.
Okay.
So that's the reason it worked so well for me.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, mine sounded a little bit different. Mm-hmm. For example, one of the best. Well, this is going to sound weird, but one of the best things that happened was they picked me up and threw me on the ground and binded my hands behind my back,
wow.
Face down. And when that happened, I was like, "Oh, I'm back at Heretic."
I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
But it makes sense because there was liquid involved. So there was blood, and I think there might have been some dirty, slimy type stuff.
They wiped a little bit of that on me. Yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it was Heretic to me.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Good.
and I'm excited to see what their next show is going to be about.
Cool.
And this is leading up to a show in September called Devotee of Evil. And apparently it's going for 2 nights, which usually Heretic shows only happen one night, so tickets are very limited. I think this is going to be 2. Tickets will probably still be very limited, but there's a better chance that you'll be able to get one based on that. Also, we have a little treat because Adrian took some time out of his miles and miles of lines that he had at the mini haunt and gave us a little interview. So here's a little interview with Adrian from Heretic.
I am Adrian Marcato with Heretic Horror House, and we're here at Scare LA doing mini haunt. And I'm also on a panel with the interactive masterminds, I guess, Alone and other haunts as well.
As a Heretic veteran, going through this, it was pretty mild compared to usual Heretic standards.
Yes.
How is the crowd reacting to what you have in here?
Really well. There's a lot of them that are newbies to the format of an extreme haunt. So it's always interesting to see and hear them react to what we have. It's a little watered down, but it's still giving them the visceral intensity that we try to put in the shows. It's fun. I mean, it's just I want them to experience what Heretic is. So it's kind of it's a good situation, but the other time I'm like, come back to when we actually have another show so you can experience the full atmospheric submersion.
Are you at all worried of someone coming through this and then going through a real show that's going to be way more extreme for those patrons that aren't extreme haunters, that they go through this and they think, wow, this is really cool, this is different, I go through Alone, really cool, and then they go to a real Heretic show? Like, does that worry you at all? Or?
That's a great question, because one of the guests that we had from our last show, it was his first time when he went through Hex in October, and he was an Alone alum. Like, he went through every Alone show. He was a little angered when he came out of the show, but not in a bad way. He just didn't expect to be so physically manhandled. The thing with some guests is that they don't like to be touched in that way. They get defensive, and sometimes they want to react and punch. That's what he said. His reaction was, but he actually came back and said, "Your show was the one that I remember the most because every beat was so interesting and intense." But I do try to talk to the people before they come through. And I think we format a lot of things differently. Wouldn't you say so, Paul, with some of the newer shows as opposed to the older shows?
Yeah, I agree. Things have become a lot more cerebral now. There's still the intensity, the physical intensity, but it's a lot of psychological intensity as well. And also the environmental design has become even more key, I think.
Yeah. So I don't want people to come in with the false sense of what it is. I will talk to them via email. We do have a lot of new guests that are coming through, and I try to really go over everything with them. And before we do our shows, I prep everybody as to, these guys are new, take these precautions, and make sure that they don't get, they're not in for something different when they, from what they expected.
Now, one of the things that definitely sets you apart is you do so many shows. It seems that there's one once a month or once every couple months.
Yeah.
How do you keep it fresh? And have you thought about doing the same show more than one night so more people can go through?
That is my dream, to be able to do a show for a month that people can go through. Financially, these things are very taxing. So I think that still is a problem. And I know I've talked to other haunt owners. It's difficult to make sure everything covers the cost of these things. But I think as we're going further and we're learning more, there are more opportunities for Heretic to have a lot more people come through. Next year, in 2018, we're planning on having a permanent location, which will be easier, and will allow for us to have more people to come through through a whole month or 2 months, as opposed to just one night for the shows. Every experience that I create is from a real encounter. So if you've lived a life, it doesn't matter how old you are, you've had weird encounters with people in your life. So that's kind of where the inspiration is drawn from. So I've got billions, and other people have. I'm sure you do. All of us in all walks of life have had some weird encounters or strange situations. I remember you went through the was it the Omen House?
Yeah.
That's an experience that you went through, which I remember you writing that something fell off and you don't know if it was. So I try to take from those real encounters and put it into a show. So I have shows that could be written for 2 years down the line.
Wow. So please do.
Thank you. And Paul definitely is a contributor, and he helps me out a lot. This is Paul Edwards, who is also my help and
hello,
producer.
everyone.
Yeah. So we do the best we can to keep everything fresh.
Now, with that being said, because there's such a limited time frame, that also goes to limited tickets being available.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for people that are trying to go, but with the tickets being sold out almost instantly, which congratulations for you, because that means you're doing something right. But obviously, I've been through your booth. I see the lines. They go miles, it seems, in where you are today. And, if those people want to come back, do you have advice for them on how to get a ticket?
The best way that I've been telling people here too is contact me directly. Once we have a conversation back and forth, and I kind of get to know you a little bit, it's not selection. It's more me being sure that you can come through the show and that I trust you. I really try to do a vetting process where I don't just allow everybody in. But the best way to do it is to contact me personally via email, which is on our Heretic Horror website.
Okay.
So once we kind of have a little conversation back and forth, I'll do my best to get you in, and it may not be the show coming up. It could be another show down the line.
Yeah. For example, I missed my first show that I was supposed to go through. There was a problem, and I just couldn't make it. But it was by maintaining the relationship and continuing the communication, I was able to get into the next show.
Yeah, definitely. So it helps to know the person too that's coming through. I think that's a big help that I like.
Right, especially because it does get very intimate and personal
Yes.
inside your shows.
Yeah, I try to at least have some sort of a relationship, and that gives me an opportunity to tell everybody that I'm working with, this guy's okay. They can trust me, because I think that's a big thing on the other side too, that my staff and actors trust me as well. That I'm letting in a sane person, that's not going to hurt them and turn on them.
That's not going to have that punch reflex.
Exactly.
Like that. Great.
Yeah.
What do you have coming up?
September, we have Devotee of Evil. There'll be some general admission tickets available. Again, I hate to say limited, but there'll be some tickets up August 13th on the website. If you want to go through and you really have never been to a Heretic show, email me again. I'll try to get you in. If not, we have another show October 12th, which is just a complete general admission show. And that is more of a John Carpenter Escape from New York type of experience, mixed in an extreme haunt.
Okay. And you are on a panel tomorrow, and
Yes.
I heard rumors that there was going to be a Heretic announcement.
Yes, which I'm excited about and have been sitting on for months. So I wanted to kind of mention that here. We're teaming up with another haunt out in England, in the UK. They're called Cracked, and they do more of an endurance extreme haunt. And we are partnering up, and we're going to be doing a show out there with them next year in April of 2017. So if the best way to describe it is if you're in the middle of watching one movie, you're whisked away into a completely different environment, which I think is going to be really cool to see. And I've always wanted to team up and partner up with another haunt to kind of go to that back and back. I think I remember when I went to Blackout, they were with The Purge, was right next to them. Right. I did both of those, and that was really cool because it was like you went through Elements, which was a completely cool, surreal, dreamlike thing, and you go right into The Purge, which is a completely different show. It's more theatrical and cinematic, but to follow the storyline. But it was cool to jump from one to the next. So that's kind of the way it is with this show.
Great.
Tickets will be available tomorrow. I'll be listing the website, and I'll have all the information up on the Facebook page tomorrow and on the Heretic Horror House.
Nice. Congratulations on that. That seems
Thank
like
you.
a huge thing.
It's going to be really good for us. I've been wanting to tour the show. We've been asked to go to other states. We're kind of local to LA, which I love, but I've been curious to see how the Extreme Haunt fans are in the UK, which is a completely different environment.
Oh, definitely. And
Yeah.
are you yourself usually go through all of Heretic's shows before anyone else? Is that correct?
I have, it's getting harder and harder, but I try. I think even Paul here, who helps me now more so, he wants to go through. We all want to go through, but it gets harder and harder as time goes on. For the major shows, I try to go walk through it just to kind of get a sense of it. And before, it was funny, the last 4 Heretic shows I would go through, I would tell them, take me to a 10. So whatever that is in your mind is a 10, go full bore with it. And I regret that a little bit, but I actually that's kind of the feeling that I like to going through these things, is the intensity and extreme elements of it. So,
And are you going to go through Cracked?
I asked to. He said, he told me no. He said, you have a lot of work to do, buddy, so no, you're not going through the show. But I'm going to try. I really try. Like today, I want to go through Creep LA and some of the other ones here. I mean, I think we both, you and me, Paul, we both fans of it, but it's just hard being stuck working. But we're going to try to, so,
Great.
Yeah.
And you had talked about doing movie nights, and I know you did one in Vegas. Is that still something that's going to happen in LA?
We're trying to do, sorry to interrupt. We're trying to do one at the end of August. It's just the filmmaker that I want to come and speak is filming a movie right now. So schedules are conflicting. We're still going to have it, and if we don't do it in August, it'll be September, October. But those are still open for members to come and just hang out and watch a movie. The next movie we have scheduled is August Underground, and Fred Vogel is supposed to come to LA.
Wow.
But the problem is he's currently shooting a movie in production for it, so we had to push it a bit. I'm trying to get something else going, so I will definitely be posting something soon.
Great. Those are all the questions I had. Do you have any final thoughts, and where can people find your information?
Sure. The only final thoughts I have, I really want to say that Heretic has grown as a show. It's evolved. I'm a fan of this genre, as many people that are here today, and I really want to make sure that people know when they come to the show, we take extra care. We're a much different show than we were back when we first started, but it's all out of love and heart for the horror genre, and just to give people a really good time. They can go to heretichorrorhouse.com, or Facebook page is Heretic Haunted House.
Great. And what about you, Paul? Any final thoughts?
I've just been happy to participate with Heretic and grow along with the show, too. I think that one of the interesting things about these haunts is sort of what it reveals about yourself as you participate. And, I've definitely changed. I'm not the same person I was when I walked through that first show. And I'm just excited to see where I get to go from here.
So, Adrian, thank you. Paul, thank you. Thanks, guys. So that was our interview with Adrian. Thank you again for taking the time out. And for more information about Heretic, you can find them on the web at heretichorrorhouse.com, on Facebook, Heretic Haunted House, on Instagram, Heretic Haunted House _, and on Twitter, Heretic_haunted.
So, Mike, not long after that, we kind of broke apart from each other, but, the timing was very odd. And the fact that we came together again, this was a lot of fun. One of my fears is plummeting to my death.
Oh, good to know.
So, thanks.
Noted in Scope and Mirror.
Yeah, store that away. But yeah, it's just one of those things. And so therefore in the past I have done things like I have bungee jumped because of that fear, and didn't help that fear at all. Still have it. So there was a very, very short, small zip line.
Which is so cool to
Absolutely.
have. And you may be listening to this if you weren't there and thinking, wait a minute, a zip line is not a horror thing. It's not a haunt thing. How did they fit this in? Well, they gave you a broomstick so you could zip line like you were flying on a broom like a witch.
It was awesome. Which I actually, I requested the broomstick, but they forgot to give it to me. So when I was up at the top, they were like, wait a minute, I don't have a broomstick. And the guy's like, oh, just go ahead, jump. But the funny thing for me was I just walked by it and there was no one standing there. And I just looked at them and went, wait, there's no one in line for this? And they said, yeah, like, you want to do it? Like, other than my fear of plummeting to my death, yes, I want to do this. I'm like, oh, come on. And so, like, I was standing there and, like, about to step into the harness, and I turned around and Jeff Heimbuch, Martina, Alex, Taylor, like, suddenly, like, 4 people I knew, I go like, wait, Russell, are you doing this? And then I was like, yeah, I kind of, like, have this fear of falling thing, and I'm like, so I figured, why not? It seems like this seems doable for me. And they were like, oh, this is going to be good. So that happens, and I'm walking across, and then what happens, Mike, as I'm walking toward the stairs to climb up for the zip line?
You slipped and fell?
No. Although that would be very me. So, no, I turn around and I hear, wait, is that Russell? And it was you guys.
And immediately got my phone out to record it.
Yes, which I appreciate. So yeah, I ran into, I don't know, who else was there?
Debbie and Jake, I think.
Yeah, and so they walked over. So suddenly this me facing this weird little like, oh, there's no one in line for this. I'll do this real quick. Suddenly I had about 10 people who were like there to support me and like, go Russell. It was really funny, and I'm so glad that all of you were there. So this is, by the way, this what happened recently with karaoke too.
Yeah.
Like,
peer pressure, man.
I am literally expanding all these horizons thanks to my little haunt community of friends. They're encouraging me to face fears, even the silly ones.
And I could easily make a joke about Russell doing karaoke and having it be like, oh, that's the real horror, but I'm not, because it was actually really good.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. That's enough out of me.
So yes, so we were at an 80s club and I went country, just to be different. So we and then Mike, you did the zip line later.
I did.
And did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I had the broomstick and everything.
I have not seen photos of this.
Oh, I'll show you after.
Okay, cool. I have not seen photos of this.
But yeah, like I just thought that was a really cool extra thing to have there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know,
it was free with your admission, and you know, it wasn't a long ride, but it doesn't really matter because, you know, that was my first taste of ziplining ever.
Yeah, mine too, actually.
You know, it's like, so like, thank you, Scarlet, for thinking outside the box and having something like that you really wouldn't think of having at a horror convention or a Halloween convention.
Yeah, and the location was perfect. It was like right out in front between the two buildings. So every time you walked by, it was right there, so you could gauge the line and everything. It was really well placed. After my zipline adventure, I went, and actually the way I discovered the zipline had no line is I was on my way to get ready for a panel. Now, we mentioned in an earlier podcast that for the Blackout Experiments documentary, I got interviewed for National Public Radio's Film Week program, hosted by Larry Mantle. On that program, they had a woman named Margee Kerr on as an expert on fear. This is a woman who is doing research on the science of fear. And she was at Scare LA, and she had a panel where she spoke about scientific research on fear, the reactions people have, the physical effects on the body, the emotional and psychological effects that fear has, and also how to play with fear. She's actually connected to a haunt in Pennsylvania where she has used some of the scientific findings in helping to design haunt experiences. She's this year she's not quite involved as heavily with that aspect of the community because of various, I think she's changing locations or something. So she's not as involved as heavily this year with that. However, she has offered advice, etc., to that haunt that she was connected to in Pennsylvania. But the reason she was at this convention is just to talk about fear. And she has written a book called Scream, Chilling Adventures in the Science of Fear.
And please tell everybody about one of the coolest things about this book.
Something which I did actually not realize until she pointed it out as I was purchasing it. The book glows in the dark.
That's so cool.
So literally, if you're at night, you if it's in your room and it's gotten like light during the day, you see the word "scream" like glowing in the dark. So this panel, Mike, I know that you were interested, but I don't think you made it. You were doing something else while this was going on.
We're correct.
This was a fascinating panel. A bit scientific in nature. She presented a lot of like factual information. So, and also she's a university instructor as well. So it had a little bit of a classroom vibe. And I'm not saying that as a negative. I'm saying that as a positive because the information she was giving was so fascinating. I absolutely loved hearing this woman speak. And I was aware of her work vaguely, before the National Public Radio interview that I did with, where she was the other person on the other end of the phone, sort of, and Rich Fox, the director of the documentary, was also interviewed on that program, and she was commenting about, you know, people like you and me, Mike, who search these adventures out, and in her panel, she talked about the science of, you know, like, what do you feel, and socially, what does this do for us? And I just found it utterly fascinating. And she was covering a lot of information that was actually in her book. And to me, the interesting thing is that, like, there are social ramifications to how we experience fear. And she talked about the idea of the haunted house, of the difference between some of the immersion stuff that we do, which is one-on-one, has a different effect, and how if you go through a haunted house in a group, the group dynamic, like, reinforces positive aspects of us and protection of each other, and the idea that, you know, we become bolder because partially we don't want to be embarrassed, or because we don't want to like show fear in case it makes others afraid. Like, she actually broke down a lot of those sort of social norms. Utterly fascinating for those of us who seek these things out and go to them as groups and one-on-one. So I was aware of her book before I actually bought it, and she graciously signed it there at the convention. I am so looking forward to reading this book. It is my goal to read it before the haunt season this year, because you and me, we play with this, and we do talk about the psychological and the emotional aspects of this. I get more freaked out, I think, than you do sometimes, but I know for a fact that this stuff, like, affects you as well.
Oh yeah.
So I'm so looking forward to this book.
One thing I'm wondering, and I don't know if anybody brought it up as a question in the panel, but with people that do extreme haunts, like, I would really love to see if she did some study, or if she's listening to this and you want to talk to us about it, that would be amazing. If you do extreme haunts and then something that you have experienced in a haunt happens in real life, what does that do? Because, and where I'm going with this is, you know, in extreme haunts, we're roughed up. There's breath play. There can be weapons involved. What happens to people like us where if something bad were to happen, if we were to get held up, you know, do we go into haunt mode where it's like, this isn't real? Okay. Do you go with it? Do you deal with things better if someone comes up behind you and tries to choke you out to get your wallet? You know, things like that. Like, you have mentioned previously that you had gotten jumped at one point.
Yeah.
If that happened at this point in your life, because of all the extreme haunts, would you have a different reaction? You know, things like that.
What Mike is referring to is, Mike knows that there was a point in my past where I was mugged by 3 guys. And it got a little violent, and I wound up with a black eye and a back injury, but I was basically mugged by the 3 Stooges. It was the most ridiculous, stupid thing, and so awkward, but then it took a violent turn in the middle of it, and it got really dark. It's interesting that you went there, Mike, because there was a question asked during the Q&A section, not exactly what you just asked. And I'm going to have to extrapolate a little bit from what her answer to the other question was. And I would say there's not enough specific research on what you just said specifically.
Okay.
But the question that was asked was, people who seek these things out, like, you have this information about how fear affects people, and there are people who deal with it and people who don't deal with it well. Like, okay, well, if there are people who really, like, have all of this play area with fear, like, what happens when they have to face something traumatic in real life? You said specifically, like, the same thing that we encounter in the dark in a haunt.
Right.
It's like, that wasn't the question. The question was, like, how do they handle a panic situation in real life? And her answer was that not enough specific research has been done on that. Some research has been done on that. And she said there's not enough info to make a conclusion, but she does know, she said, from research that it doesn't always correlate like you think.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't help necessarily, or it doesn't hurt. Some people can handle the real trauma, the real panic scenarios better than others, but she said that there wasn't enough information to kind of correlate a conclusion or get to a conclusion apparently as to whether it affects your ability to handle a real life panic situation.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting that you went there because somebody asked a similar veined question. And look, we've talked about, we've encountered haunt scenarios that, Blackout, I think, is a master of this, of they put you in a situation and they let you linger in it in a way that it starts to make you ponder, like, what do they want me to do? What do they want from me? Which correlates to what would I do in real life? And, there's several times in Blackout where you are dealing with, like you're watching an abusive relationship or maybe like a human trafficking scenario, as someone once proposed about one of their shows. So you go through that, and it does make you ponder how you would, but there doesn't seem to be scientific exploration yet enough to be able to draw any conclusions.
Okay.
But interesting stuff. It's a really interesting question. I find it interesting that you went there and somebody sitting listening to her present the information she was presenting also went to a very similar vein.
Well, because it makes me wonder if we get numbed to it. That's the whole reason we searched out extreme haunts, because we were numb from going to regular haunted houses. Like, this does nothing for me. Oh,
that's interesting because that's a small part of it for me.
Okay.
I know, it's like back in the Blackout special where we interviewed, one of the co-creators of Blackout, Josh Randall, on an earlier podcast, you went down that road and you explored some of that. For me, it is less about that and more about emotional play and how does this make me feel? Like, how can I deal with this? If I let myself go there emotionally, what's the ramifications later? Like, so it's more of an exploration for me rather than I was numb. But I totally see where you're coming from, and I do have a little aspect of that in me of, like, sometimes the big theme park haunts, they're a little bland because it's just people jumping out and yelling boo. Or actually, they don't yell boo, they usually rawr. So, if you would like more information about Margee Kerr and her book and her work and research, let me spell her name first because it is a little unique. Margee, and her last name is Kerr. Her book is titled Scream, Chilling Adventures in the Science of Fear. It's available in all of the basic formats where you would normally buy a book, and I highly recommend you check it out. And as Mike pointed out, the hardcover glows in the dark. It's awesome. Now, you can check her out at margeekerr.com, and on Facebook, look for margee.kerr. On Instagram, at Margee Kerr, and on Twitter, at Margee Kerr. And again, Margeekerr.
So I did a couple things. I'm not sure if you did. I went to check out the Hollywood Horror Museum exhibit.
I did not make that, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. So that was pretty cool. They're trying to make a horror museum in Hollywood. And they had a few of the exhibits up at Scare LA, and to try to get donations and funding and more information out there, because I don't think a lot of people know about it just yet. And it was really cool. It was like a mini museum. They had things like the zombie from Michael Jackson's Thriller. They had a full-size Arnold Schwarzenegger from Terminator 2. They had the Doctor Who TARDIS. They had props from Creature from the Black Lagoon. They had the deck from the Starship Enterprise that you could take pictures on. It was really cool. Mm-hmm. I really hope that this actually happens and there is a horror museum, because we have the Museum of Death in Hollywood, which is awesome, but that's more about serial killers and death. So to have something with actual horror movie props and things like that, I think would be a compliment to everything else that's here.
And actually, it's surprising that Los Angeles, being supposedly the movie capital of the world, doesn't have something like this already in a permanent state.
Right.
We get museum exhibits every now and then, but you would think that Los Angeles would be able to house a full-time museum.
And for more information on the Hollywood Horror Museum, you can check them out on the web at hollywoodhorror.org, on Facebook, Hollywood Horror Museum, on Instagram, H Horror Museum, and on Twitter, Horror Museum. Another thing I did was in the haunt area, there was an experience called the Blacklight experience. Not to be confused with the blackout experience. But it was a really interesting and fun thing to walk through. And it was very good. It was a good balance because there were kids there. So this was something they could go through.
Absolutely.
So this wasn't put on by a haunt. It was created by Debbie Cable. And she has done things for the Playboy Mansion Halloween party, Maxim, museums, music festivals, and things like that. So what it was is you get a pair of 3D glasses and everything inside is blacklit. And with the 3D glasses, everything is 3D. And it was just really cool. And it was a good, I guess, sort of breather from the other haunts because this was it was nice and quiet. No one's trying to scare you. It was just very
goofy fun.
Yeah, it was very visual. And it was really interesting to see because...
I have a question for you, Mike. Have you ever gone through a maze, a haunted house maze that uses that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, because I know Universal has done it a few years on and off. I find it fascinating. And unfortunately, I didn't go through the walkthrough, but what happened with me is I went to try to go do this experience at Scare LA, and they were, I guess, broken for lunch.
Oh,
or something.
okay.
And so I walked up, and literally what somebody did is like, yeah, the walkthrough, we're coming back at this, but what they did is they let me kind of peek in and just do a quick look. And so I understand what you're saying about it was just a fun thing.
Yeah.
And so completely unique, unlike anything else that they have offered there on the floor.
It was a good decompression haunt. Go do Heretic, then walk through the Blacklight experience. Yeah, and I think more and more haunts are starting to use this. I know you mentioned Universal, Six Flags did it. It takes some talent to do.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things is if it's done well, and Universal did this, you can put the 3D blacklight paint on actors. So what can happen inside the room is the 3D changes, or as the actors approach you, it becomes a very disorienting experience. So it's definitely something that we've encountered in haunts, and it's another experimentation. It's another thing, that is fun to play with.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this goes. I mean, the one thing I worry about is, will virtual reality make this just go away?
I hope not.
Yeah, because there is a place for this.
Oh, absolutely. And there's I'm going to get theater nerdy on you for a second. There's a whole long tradition in Europe of blacklight theater.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's literally you walk into a dark room and it's not 3D, but it is a blacklight experience where things are formed with blacklight sensitive imagery and colors, and there are entire evenings of theater built around this, of just sitting watching these little tableaus or things happen and play out in blacklight. So it's actually got a rich theatrical tradition. So yeah, absolutely, it would be interesting. I hope this continues, and I hope you're right. I hope VR doesn't kill this, because it's cool.
Yeah, it really is.
And that seemed to close out the day, I think, for both of, except for one final event on that Saturday at Scare LA.
Yes, and this was probably the highlight of my weekend.
Back when Scare LA was first starting to announce, what they were having, attractions that they were having, when they announced this, that was the moment that I said, I'm getting a ticket to Scare LA. And what it was Todd Robbins.
The show was called Todd Robbins, Dark Illusions and Even Darker Reality.
For those of you who don't know the name Todd Robbins immediately and are probably wondering, why are Mike and Russell so excited about this guy? I discovered Todd Robbins several years ago with an off-Broadway show called Play Dead in New York, which was directed by Teller of Penn and Teller fame. And it is this really dark, spooky show about the history of serial killers and their methods, and Todd Robbins is an awesome storyteller. And in that show, he wove together stories about these people who really existed and preyed on innocence, and combined it with some very creepy illusions sometimes. And, the name of this show which is, dark illusions and even darker reality, part of what he does is he points out that we live in a dark world, and yet we are surrounded by positivity, and there are lessons to be learned from the dark that will enhance the light. That's my interpretation of this work. So Play Dead also played here in Los Angeles a few years ago. There are hopes of it in the future of bringing another version to Vegas and possibly tour. Todd Robbins is a name to be aware of. If you want more information on him, there is an actual documentary about him, American Carney, True Tales from the Circus Sideshow. Last time I checked, this was not available on Netflix, but it used to be, so you should hopefully be able to seek it out wherever you seek out movies that you can't get on Netflix. So that's sort of the history of this guy. He's a magician. He's a former sideshow performer. He's a really cool guy who does really cool stuff. And this show at Scare LA, he came out and there was definitely storytelling, and there were a few really cringe-worthy, God, I hate to call them stunts.
Can I do my cheesy joke about this show?
Sure.
Okay, so you were there, and for anybody listening that was there, you'll understand this really bad joke. But this show started off with a bang.
Ooh, that's really cheesy.
Ah.
So he did something involving weaponry and gunfire.
And I say that random joke because his first illusion was he had 6 starter pistols and told a story about how starter pistols can kill even though they're blanks. And he gave a couple examples like Brandon Lee from The Crow. And what he did is he called someone up on stage and gave her some dice, and basically she rolled the dice, and whatever numbers would come up, he wrote on a board. After he got 5 numbers out of the 6, he pulled out the bag and he pulled out the starter pistols. Each one was numbered and went in order. And you could hear the groans from the crowd when he started doing this, and it was incredible.
Well, it's a really disturbing imagery because what he did is he would pick up each corresponding pistol corresponded with a number that was chosen randomly by rolling dice, and he would point it at himself somewhere, either at the head, in the mouth, toward his torso, his heart,
his groin.
Yeah. So it's really difficult to watch someone pick up a gun and shoot themselves. And I know that sounds just awful, but that's what we were watching.
Yeah, even though you know deep down inside, like, this is a magic trick, like, I know he's going to be okay, watching that happen in front of you, still, you have that what if moment.
Oh, it's a disconcerting image, totally. It's really nerve-wracking. And so he eliminates all of the numbers until there's only 2 pistols left. He very quickly fires one, and then the next one he fires into the air, and somehow, through the magic of the roll of the dice and using of the starter pistols, the right starter pistol was left remaining, and that was the one he fired into the air. It was really uncomfortable in that room by the time he got there. It was really uncomfortable. And that was the beginning of this show.
Yeah. Like I said, it started off with a bang.
Yes. Like I said, this was the reason I came to Scare LA, was to see this show. To see him speak, and he did not disappoint. This was an hour of marvelous storytelling and really thought-provoking points being made. And he continued on, and there were certainly tricks and stunts and sideshow type things being done. But his charm, is his storytelling and the points and observations that he makes.
Yeah, you kind of have an instant respect for him.
Oh,
like, when most people, if they meet someone, it's like, oh, hey, Dave, hey, John. But when I met him, it was like Mr. Robbins. Like, it's like, it's really interesting. And that's what he portrays. And through his stories, through his demeanor, you just have this instant respect for him.
I had a friend who, like, anytime that he respected somebody, he would use this phrase of, now there's a man who's lived. And that's how I feel about him.
Right.
Like, this man has so much experience and such a wealth of knowledge. I have such respect for this man. And, I was able to walk up to him. I encountered him after Play Dead. here in Los Angeles, and I walked up to him at Scare LA and just said, I want to thank you. Like, I want to thank you for presenting what you present, because it is so thought-provoking. And it really does make you appreciate who you are and what you have.
Yeah.
Because the thing that he points to is the fragility of our daily existence. And, the magic trick that ends with him pointing a gun at himself and firing makes that point of this can all go away very, very quickly, and be grateful for what you have in front of you. So that's any time that a performer adds a depth like that to something that most people would dismiss as being weird or freakish, like I have such respect for him.
Yeah, and he takes you to a dark place. Even in Play Dead, it's super dark. And the things that he does, they go along with that, and they work.
Oh, yeah. Really, really glad that Todd Robbins was at Scare LA. Definitely a highlight for me, Mike.
Oh, yeah, me too. I saw Play Dead along with you when it was in LA, and it was so well done and so, so good. And, I've been a fan of his, and, you'll see him pop up on random places. Like, I remember seeing him on Oddities once. It was that show, and he was looking for sideshow memorabilia, and it's like, oh my God, it's Todd Robbins. Is he going to eat a light bulb? And he did.
So, yeah.
So for more information on Todd Robbins, you can check him out on the web at toddrobbins.com, on Facebook, Todd Robbins, on Instagram, Todd Robbins NYC, and on Twitter, Todd Robbins. I do want to mention that his Instagram doesn't seem to be very active, but it's worth going to just to see the picture of him and his son. It's one of the most adorable pictures you will ever see.
Also, you can see Todd Robbins on the series called True Nightmares, which appears on Investigation Discovery. Check local listings. So Mike and I wrapped up our day at Scare LA, and then that night we hung out, had some dinner with friends, gathering people who were following the Tension Experience and other haunt friends, and we all met at a local restaurant, caught up with people, and then got some sleep. And then we tackled it the next day. So, Mike, the first thing that we did on Sunday at Scare LA was yet another haunt experience.
Yes. Scare LA had their own haunt that they made with the help of people from Not Scary Farm.
Specifically, Brooke Adair Walters was the person that they actually credited. So I believe she helped design this particular haunt event at Scare LA.
And it was awesome.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
But the name of it was called Blood Offering, Legend of the Iron Witch.
And the show starts while you're in line, because they have, would you say, a reverend character?
That would work.
That would talk to people, and man, he loved our group.
Yes. Yeah, because he immediately was drawn to you and Debbie. Debbie he thought was evil.
She is.
Oh, but in the nicest way. No, and then he sort of recruited you.
Yeah, that was so much fun. I got to scream at people in the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. At his encouragement.
Yeah. And then you could tell that the screaming took a toll on him all of day Saturday, because Sunday morning his voice was kind of shot. And that's why I think he tried to recruit me to do it.
Oh, it's very funny. Also, at that time, David, who was going to join us, I'm literally, like, he's messing with Debbie, claiming that she's evil and that everyone around her should be able to sense the evil coming from her. And he's recruiting Mike to scream. And I'm standing between these two people on a cell phone because our friend David is trying to find us in the convention. So he keeps looking at me like I'm insane, that all of this is going around me. And then I raised my hand. And he just thought I was a nut job at that point, because I was just like, I was trying to, because we were up against a wall and there were people in front of us. So David could find us. I raised my hand, and he turned it into part of the bit, because when I said, no, I want someone to join us. I want someone to join us. And he immediately like, oh, you're recruiting too. And like, there are more people to come and join. So he like totally played in character to our little group and all the interactions that were going on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, he was great. I loved him.
It was absolutely a lot of fun to start this. And then we went into the actual haunt. And first of all, for a convention haunt, the production design of this thing was really cool, really well done. Which, actually, you were talking about who that some of the people from Not Scary Farm, they had someone named Donald Jolson, who they listed as a main prop maker guy who I guess also had a hand on the stuff that was inside the visuals. I'm hoping we're crediting these people right, because we really had a good time with this. The interior, this was one of those things where, again, we like active haunts, and we were crawling, and there were narrow passageways in this thing, which it always impresses me when people are not afraid to go there with claustrophobia and things like that. Some people might feel that way in a couple of the narrowest passageways here.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not that extremely claustrophobic, but when I certainly have to deal with it when it gets very, very intense. But something like a narrow hallway doesn't bother me. But I did turn a corner and went, wow, this is really narrow. So the story, we were coming in on some sort of battle or war, was my impression.
Well, before we get there, you just mentioned how we like interactive haunts.
Yes.
What happened when we got in there, Chosen One?
So I was I was chosen to be the first sacrifice if we ever got into any trouble.
Which would be like in real life too.
Yeah, because I was the oldest.
And what did they say? It's like, oh, you're not going to have much time to live anyway.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Again with the age crap with me. So they were poking fun at that. Like, I was hanging out with all these young people. So you're not that young. So, but yeah, it was like they were having fun with us and they were interacting with us. And so right at the beginning, one of the first things that happened was I got marked with a cross on my forehead.
Because you were the first to go.
Yes, apparently. So I was the one that would be sacrificed. So they sent us into the maze, and this was a really clever maze.
Yeah.
There was a couple of really good surprises. I don't know if you talked to, he was not in our group, our friend Jake, who also was at Scarlet that day. There's one really surprising scare involving, if you've gone through traditional haunts, drop panels are common. Well, they hid a drop panel in this thing that was so clever because they completely focused you on one area of a wall which had a window, and then there was a drop panel right next to it. And you didn't notice the drop panel, and apparently when Jake went through, he was standing directly in front of the drop panel, so when it fell, the actor was literally right next to Jake. And apparently completely scared the crap out of him.
That's so good.
Yeah, he was so happy. He was like, oh, they got me so good. It was so great.
That scene got me too. It totally got me. Like my stomach dropped when that happened. Like I don't have like the emotional sounds you do, but my inside was probably the same because I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah, there were a couple of rounding corners. There were a couple of good jump scares. Production design was really nice. This was really fun. The crawling through the tunnel was awesome.
And it was all good religion type stuff.
Yeah.
So you had these like creepy bloody nuns and
yes, they were awesome. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of that type of imagery and the weird like disjointed movement of the nun that we encountered was very creepy.
Yeah.
But definitely had a good time with this. And I was really, really happy that they had put so much effort into this because the production value was high. There were a lot of actors in this thing.
Oh,
too.
definitely.
Like every corner, there were 2 or 3 characters that we encountered, and so they were able to get multiple people in our group with different scares. So, which when you're going through traditional haunt, Mike and I have complained about the whole conga line effect. They dealt with that because even when we ended up conga lining at a couple points, there were enough characters inside the haunt to effectively scare. It was really enjoyable. I was happy going through the blood offering.
Yeah, I really liked it. To have something like this at a convention that was so well done.
Yeah.
Like I can only imagine what these people are doing for professional haunts.
Yeah, and also point to the makeup because the makeup was really, really good in this thing.
So after we finished that, we had to get to a panel because Sunday was the day of panels for us.
Yes, it was.
The first panel we did was one I was definitely looking forward to because this had 6 of the area's haunts on one panel, like the creators of 6 different haunts or haunts and experiences, I should say. So there were the creators of Alone, 17th Door, Delusion, Screenshot Productions, Creep, and Heretic. And it was moderated by John Schnitzer, who is making the movie called Haunters, and it's all about haunted houses.
Yeah, this was really interesting. I was when I first read this lineup, I thought, what a weird mix of tone, because these are very, very different experiences. And I wasn't sure how the panel would be handled. But the wide variety and the mix of tones of the haunts, because these people are creating wildly different events.
Oh, yeah.
So, and actually, I think it worked to the strength of the panel.
It definitely did. The only criticism I have is to have 6 different creators with only an hour time.
Yeah, I agree.
This could have been a 3 or 4 hour panel, and I still wouldn't have gotten bored. I just wish that more time was allotted for this.
Right, absolutely. During the panel, the things that were discussed included technique, how they come up with ideas for shows, themes. They were pointing to the differences of the different types of experiences. It was sort of like an hors d'oeuvre platter for LA haunt goers, because it definitely highlighted a whole bunch of stuff that was coming up for our haunt season in this area, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed the fact that that we were able to get, even though they didn't have a lot of time per haunt. I'm really glad that they featured so many different types.
Right, and newer types too.
Yes.
And there was something on that panel for everybody. If you liked haunted houses, you had a haunted house. If you liked immersive experiences, you had immersive experiences.
Existential cerebral mind meanderings?
Yeah. If you wanted an extreme haunt, you had that.
Right.
You had every part of the haunt gambit was represented on this panel. And it was such a good idea. I loved it.
Yeah. And like I said, I walked in not sure. Out of that panel, Mike, was there anything that surprised you, or for the upcoming season, was there something that got highlighted that really, really excited you? Or
I was excited about everything, pretty much, because these are all things that I want to do and plan on seeing. The one surprise / shock was probably the 17th Door, featuring a character called the School Shooter. And I think that is going to be a very touchy subject if that's going to be in their marketing for a lot of people.
Yeah, and actually they touched on it last year, but from the other angle. Their show opened last year where you witnessed a suicide in a classroom. And I know that their material rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So they seem to be courting controversy.
Right, which I get, and I have to, if that's what you're doing, I have to give you a pat on the back for having the balls to do that. You know that there's going to be negativity. You know that this is going to cause controversy. But at the same time, from a marketing standpoint, there's no bad press. So if you have people protesting the 17th Door because of this character, and you have news crews down there interviewing people oh, I don't agree with it, that's going to get the 17th Door to so many more people, and it's just going to get them more people going through just to see what it is.
True. Yeah, I had very mixed feelings over 17th Door last year. It will be interesting to see what they do with that.
If you missed this panel, fear not, because I recorded it and it's up on YouTube right now. And you can find that by searching YouTube for Masterminds of Interactive Horror panel, Scare LA 2016. And you can see what we're talking about and hear what we're talking about. And I think you'll enjoy it if you're a fan of haunted houses and you weren't able to see this panel.
Yeah, and also for people not in the Los Angeles area, I think it'll give a good glimpse as to some of the thought processes and some of the different types of experiences that we are lucky enough to have within our reach here.
Definitely. And because there were 6 different haunts and experiences on this panel, we're not going to go through and give you all the information for their websites and Instagrams, but it will be in the show notes.
And after that, I had to leave that panel a little bit early, Mike, because I had to prepare for the next panel.
Which was?
The Blackout Experiments documentary Q&A, which I'm on the panel, so I will say that I think this panel turned out really, really well. I mean, I've done several of the panels supporting the documentary, The Blackout Experiments, and this panel I thought had a really interesting casual vibe about it, partially because Josh Randall, the co-creator of Blackout, was made the moderator. And so I think he cut to the chase really, really quickly. So that was really enjoyable for us who were on the panel. And it I think put us at ease a little bit, even though, to say that you're at ease around Josh Randall, that feels a little weird. And if you've seen the documentary, you will know why I say that. But no, but there was something about this panel that felt really, really good. And it was a reunion of sorts for us. Because at the other panels, the Sundance panels, I went to FilmQuest to support the documentary there. At the other panels, there was only one panel where all of us were there at the same time. So this was a chance, sort of a reuniting of that. And I think that vibe helped the panel. How do you feel it went?
As a Blackout fan, this was probably the best thing I've ever seen.
Wow, really?
It was, because usually if it's something specific about Blackout, there's a lot of secrecy. There's a lot of, we're not going to talk about this. But because this was a mix of the Blackout experiments and Blackout, it just, and there were questions from people not in the room. So there was a wider variety of questions, because Blackout asked on their Facebook page the week before, do you have questions? Because we get the same ones all the time. And Josh had printed out those questions and gave them to you to ask. And so mix those questions with questions from the crowd, and some of the stories and information that were told in that panel, even for someone like me who's been a longtime Blackout fan, that left me saying, holy crap, I didn't know that. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was very happy when Josh approached us before the panel, and he had printed out all these questions from Facebook, and he basically said, if we get to it, if this works out, you choose a question or two that you would want to be asked if you were somewhere else reading this on Facebook or, seeing the panel, So, he reached out to Facebook, and he let us make the decision. Josh did not dictate what questions we asked him. Those were totally up to us. So the fact that he was willing to go and play there, that was awesome. It was really, really nice. And I got to ask a question that I have always wondered, and people ask me all the time, is the whole, does Blackout change the event for male and female patrons?
Right.
And that is something that for some reason people have asked me a lot if I know the answer to that question. So, basically Josh said they were equal opportunity offenders and they went after everyone. But that was a really nice vibe to that experience, that panel.
And the cool thing also about having Josh as the moderator is he cut to the chase, and he was so forceful. There were times when he knows histories of people and how they can speak, Russell, and just being up front and be like, you only have this amount of time. If not, I'm moving on. He cut other people off in the panel, not rudely, but it was just like, okay, we're moving on. And having that in a panel is so important, because people can just keep talking and keep talking.
Mm-hmm. No, he did very, very well. And it was very funny that, what you just said is I think he knew who to ask certain questions.
Right.
When he was like, okay, I'm going to go to Bob for this question. I'm going to go to Allison for this question. I'm going to go to Abel for this. And then he spoke with Rich directly, and he spoke to me directly concerning other things. So, I think it was a really wise choice to make him moderate. I think he did a great job.
Yeah, when you have that much personal, intimate contact with someone over the years, you're going to know who to ask what.
Well, it's really weird because you say that, and yet somebody asked me, am I friends with Josh Randall? And I had to say, no, I'm not. It's like weird, I'm very familiar with his work. He's very familiar with things that scare me in the dark. And yet it's weird to say that I'm not, it's like we don't hang out. We just don't.
Right.
And yet he does know. It's like he knows, I think he knows all of us that were on that panel very, very well. And it worked to the advantage of the panel. So, and it's like, now I feel bad that I said I'm not friends with Josh Randall. So,
well, you know what you mean.
I like Josh Randall.
Yeah.
So I respect the hell out of Josh and Chris, both the creators of Blackout. So, but there's part of me going oh, I just said I wasn't no, that wasn't a slight in any way. So
it just means you're not hey, you want to grab dinner tonight?
Yeah.
You're not on that level.
Yeah. No, not that kind of friend. as Mike said, this panel sort of covered the documentary, the Blackout experiments, and there were questions about Blackout itself. So here's some information. If you want to look up the blackoutexperiments.com for more information about the documentary, and also on Facebook, the Blackout Experiments, on Instagram, Blackout Experiments, and on Twitter, Blackout Doc. Now, if you want actual information about Blackout and the haunt, and I'm sure upcoming information will be released hopefully soon for this haunt season, blackoutexperience.com. On Facebook, Blackout Haunted House. On Instagram, The Blackout Experience. And on Twitter, NYC Haunted House.
So after that panel, I finally had some time to finally do Alone. Alone had an experience called The Mushin of the Ashin Deer Clan,
which I had actually done right before the immersive panel, which is why I was a little bit late to that panel.
Okay. So after what happened at Midsummer Scream, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, to recap, I had sort of a technical glitch in the middle of my Alone show, and actually I wasn't the only one. Numerous patrons got very confused in the Alone show at Midsummer Scream. It turned into a very negative experience for me at Midsummer Scream going through Alone, and then it ended with one of the highlights of the Midsummer Scream convention. Like, the ending of that Alone show, just so much incredible fun. So I had mixed feelings, actually, about going back, but this is, like, me, Mike, I felt I had to do Alone at Scare LA because I'd had the negative experience at Midsummer Scream, which ended positively, but it was a really mixed bag. So I felt I had to give them another shot. And I had a very positive experience at Scare LA. There were no technical glitches. It was a really interesting show. It was much more cerebral than I expected. I expected something a little bit more physical, even though there were physical aspects to this show. I don't know what to think of this show because I thought it was such an odd thing to do in the middle of a haunt convention because it was so mind and body oriented as far as you listen to a lot of talking during the course of the show. Do you want to kind of explain how you got into it?
You have to find out where they were. So much like Midsummer Scream, you have to find something that was posted up around the convention. And they were in multiple spots. And once you found that, I don't want to give too much away just in case they do this in the future.
Correct.
But once you found that, you have to do something else. Once you did that certain thing, you found out the location. And it wasn't that straightforward. I think it was more riddle-like. Russell disagrees.
Yeah, I didn't find it a riddle because as soon as I read it, I knew immediately where to go.
Oh, I did too. But I don't know. If you're not saying go here, to me, anything more is a riddle.
Okay, all right. I see your point, but it was not hard to figure out once you got the information. And can I share a quick little anecdote about this?
Yeah.
The creators of Alone are Lawrence and Devin, and certainly because of, we know them by sight. I was in the convention and I ran into them and said hello and said I was looking forward to trying the show later. And I was, let's just say I was very, very close to the start point at that point. And I had noticed something visual, and I just said, I looked at them and I went, oh, so I'm assuming this is the start point. Well, Devin looks at me and says, like, oh, well, okay, so yeah, this is and Lawrence realized that I hadn't found the first clue.
Oh.
Lawrence literally physically grabbed Devin and dragged him away from me at a run and ran up the stairs dragging Devin to make sure that Devin did not give me any information. And as they were running up the stairs, I literally screamed after them like, "Evil! You are evil!" Because Lawrence realized, like, no, darn it, he doesn't have the information yet. He doesn't know the clue. Because like I said, I noticed something visually. And so that, I think maybe that's also why when I did get the clue, it was like, okay. That makes sense. But no, I would have figured out the clue immediately.
That's awesome that they did that.
Oh, I was like, it was just so sly of them. And the The grin on Lawrence's face was hysterical.
I feel like that's something I would do to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it was very, very funny because Devin was like, I think I can answer your question, and Lawrence just literally dragged him away before he even had the chance.
That's so rad.
I thought that was hysterically funny.
Good job, guys.
Now, the actual experience.
I loved it so much. And if you explained to me what was going to happen, you would probably think, oh, Mike would probably not really like this that much. But
I'm actually a little surprised that you liked it that much.
Everything just was perfect. And I did this late on Sunday. I did this after the blackout panel. So it was closer to the end of the day. It was 4:00. The sun wasn't as hot as it was at noon.
That was a factor for me.
Because there are certain points where you go outside and you're told to lay down. And I heard people from day one doing it saying, oh, it was so hot. I was in the sun. I could feel myself cooking. When I did it, there was a nice breeze. I felt like I was in shade. It was a lot cooler.
Actually, for the most experience, that was my experience as well. There were areas where I felt the heat outdoors, but my experience was similar to yours.
Okay. And having it be done basically at the end of a 2-day convention when you're walking and there's so much stimulus going on, being able to just relax and still be a part of the convention and have certain things done to you, it was just so relaxing to me. And doing this, everything just worked out perfectly. And there were times, this was also very, very audio driven. You have to have headphones and you had a soundtrack to listen to. And there were times when things just worked perfectly.
For me as well, absolutely.
And it kind of blew my mind because it made me question, wait, was this done on purpose? There's no way this could have been done to the T. I mean, there was one point where they said something about, you will feel the heat. And as soon as that happened, I was in sun and I could feel the heat. There were other parts about cooling and wind. And right then a wind blew. And it was so incredible and kind of surreal to a point.
Yeah, this relied on environment heavily. And my experience, I think, was very similar to yours. It was a really positive experience. The very beginning of this show, you get a lot of almost philosophical information. And I would think for, what, do you think 7 to 10 minutes?
It seemed like that.
Yeah, you're just sort of laying there, you're blindfolded, and which is very obviously to get you centered on what you're about to go through. And at first I was like, oh, this is really, really cerebral and heavy, and I'm not sure if I'm in the mood for this. But I just let myself go, and I started, some of it made sense to me, some of it did not. I will admit that some of it, I let myself get distracted by the environmental noise. And so I was like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be focusing on the words. But once that situation changed and I was shifted into a different environment, I completely was into the show. And what you were talking about, about sort of the coincidence of the environment, the other thing that happened is you're moved at certain points. And it always seemed like where somebody would put their hand on your shoulder, or someone would, at one point I was laying down and my head was picked up and a pillow was put underneath my head. Things like that always seems to coincide very well with the audio track somehow. And I had that same reaction of, wait, they can't be hearing what I'm hearing because it's on my phone that I'm downloading. Wait, I'm streaming. Wait, they can't be hearing what I'm hearing. It's like their timing is impeccable. I loved you were blindfolded the majority of an hour. And so your senses of the environment, of the noise, of the temperature, of the breeze, and at one point I was hearing the trees rustle. So that was all lovely and, like you said, relaxing. And when you finally get to the end, environment becomes more and more present as you get near the end of the show. I thought that was a lovely transition when you get to that final sequence where, once again, you find yourself laying down, but in a very different sounding environment.
Right. And and also the end, where you end and how you feel afterwards. I felt like I could do another 2 days of a convention at that point because I was so relaxed and invigorated based on what had just happened.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I did too. I didn't register that specifically, but yeah, I agree with you. I see that.
Here's another thing that I thought. Listening to the recording and the woman's voice, I felt like I was in the Rules of Attraction.
The Bret Easton Ellis novel?
Yes, but the movie version. Because there are so many monologues where they talk fast and it's like, and then this happened and I saw the sweat on his brow and I went and do this and I went to the party, and like those monologues where they just talk very fast. Right. I felt like I was experiencing that.
Wow, that's fascinating. I would never have made that particular connection, but now that you say it, I think I would understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I was very, especially if this makes more sense, the longer I was there listening to the voice and being moved around, I became more and more present to my own physical body in that space. I became hyper aware of the noises because I was blindfolded for like 50 minutes, in a good way. Like it was really a positive experience.
Wait, there's a bad way to be blindfolded for 50 minutes?
No, there's not. So yeah, I'm glad we both had positive experiences, and you enjoyed the Midsummer Scream experience, I think, more than I did, even though you also had a mess up with that final clue. It didn't impact you quite as badly as it did me, but I'm glad I gave it another chance for sure, because they really came through.
And also, we mentioned that Alone had something the prior week at Midsummer Scream, and I just want to give them and the other people who did two different things at each show huge props for that.
Absolutely.
Like Alone, Screenshot Productions, Shine On Collective, they had two entirely different shows a week apart.
Right.
I mean, I can only imagine how hard it is just to think of one show, say for like Halloween, but to have two shows for two Halloween conventions, then trying to have another show for Halloween, like that's just incredible to me. So amazing job, and thank you for doing what you did. You made a lot of people very happy and a lot of people very stoked that there were two different experiences that they could check out from you guys.
Yeah, truly. Those of us who are fans of the immersive experiences appreciate it greatly. And it did not go unnoticed. It was something that we talked about in the lines waiting for these events. Because immediately, like, did you do the one last week? I'm like, what did you think of that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of conversation. It is definitely appreciated.
For more information on Alone, you can check them out on the web at thealoneexperience.com, on Facebook, The Alone Experience, on Instagram, Alone Experience, and on Twitter, Alone Experience.
Near the end of the day on Sunday, we attended the indie horror panel, which was subtitled Want to Make a Scary Movie? There were 5 filmmakers from the horror genre, including Darren Lynn Bozeman, Jessica Cameron, Andrew Cash, Jean Blaylock, and Mary Russell. Now, the experience level of these filmmakers, they seemed to be a wide variety of where they are in their career and what their goals were.
Honestly, I really didn't recognize many of the names outside of Darren and Andrew. Mm-hmm. So hearing the stories and about the movies, like it got me more intrigued and wanting to check them out. So I really don't know much of the other participants' history. Right,
and I agree with what you just said. It was like, oh, they're on this panel, and their anecdotes are kind of fun. Like they're talking about experiences. I just didn't think it was a very focused panel as far as subject matter goes, because in the end, I didn't feel like they covered a lot of like how to make an indie horror movie. Like I guess what it is I'm saying is one of those cases where the title of the panel didn't seem to be what the panel was about for me personally, but I enjoyed being in that room and listening to the stories, and they got into some really interesting conversations about, for example, at one point, I thought this was really interesting because we've talked about the use of CGI blood splatter.
Yeah.
And how fake it usually comes off. And 2 of the really low-budget short filmmakers on this panel got into a conversation that was interesting because they were saying, okay, well, here's a reason you can use it if something doesn't work. You can fix the mistake. You can never say never, because you might need it at some point. And then one of the other was like, no, you can do it practical. It looks better. And so conversations like that were really interesting to me as someone who has worked on film sets. I've edited and helped on short films for directors for the last decade. So it was really interesting for me to hear conversations like that about the practicality of how do you achieve what you need to achieve on a horror short film. And it was very interesting to hear people like Andrew, who is someone who's up and coming. He had a hand in the Tales of Halloween anthology film, which came out last year, and which, by the way, I thoroughly enjoyed and would recommend people check out. And Darren Lynn Bozeman obviously is someone who's had success with the Saw series and other films. He's got a movie called Abattoir, which has been playing at film festivals recently, and I'm really looking forward to that, actually. The description sounds pretty damn cool. So just hearing different people, and even it was interesting to hear even Darren Lynn Bozeman, who's had a level of success, I think probably more than anyone else on the panel, facing the same problems.
Right.
It's like there are certain things in the film industry that are constants, and you constantly struggle. Creative freedom, creative control, money, practicality. How do you achieve an effect? Especially if you're working in the horror genre. How do you achieve mood and tone? Like, all of them, no matter what level of experience or what they were creating, have the same issues and the same conversations. That was a great equalizer for the panel for me. It was very interesting to hear different perspectives.
And that's what was one of the cool things for me, because you're definitely want to know more about industry stuff than I do. Like, I'm just a horror movie fan, so it's like, oh, cool, the dude from Saw is going to probably talk about Saw stories. I'm in. Yeah. But like me personally, I don't get much out of like, oh, when it costs this much to pay the key grip and stuff like that. Like, that doesn't interest me. So I can see why you're saying the things you say. Like, but for me, just being a horror movie fan, like, it was really cool to hear each person's like backstory and like troubles and stuff like that. Like, it's like, oh, that's really interesting. And so it was cool for me. It was really eye-opening.
Yeah, cool. It's like, it's cool that we both got something different out of that panel. That's awesome. And Mike, you had a chance to do something which I did not get to because at this point, because I had lost some time because of the panel stuff that I had dealt with earlier in Sunday, I was running out of time. And you got a chance to go do something which I missed out on.
Yeah, you and me both running out of time. So it was near the end of the day. It was right after the indie horror panel. And I was just trying to find something that I hadn't done yet that didn't have a huge line. Because even at that point, there were lines for a lot of things. So I was able to do Twisted Scare, the seance. And much like the Blacklight experience that we spoke about earlier, this was just a fun time. What it was you go into this room and you're standing on this panel that is motorized. And there's a talking skull on the table in front of you. And basically he summons the spirits. And by summoning the spirits, what you're standing on moves up and down and all around. And you can feel like the floor vibrating and things like that. It was such fun. It goes back to like kind of like that old school haunted house type of thing where it's like, oh, things are moving. And it was very clever. And I really liked it a lot.
Oh, that's very cool. I'm glad you got to do that because it was, again, that was closed. While you were doing that, because I was running out of time, I had stayed over in the area of the indie horror movie panel, and I got to do a VR thing. But I know that the people behind Twisted Scare, like that's a special effects company, aren't they?
Yeah, Twisted Scare. It's a family-owned special effects and prop house for haunted houses. They do a bunch of stuff in Field of Screams, which is a haunt in Lake Elsinore. And so that was actually the end of my day. So while I was doing that, you mentioned some VR stuff you were doing?
Yeah, like I said, because of my time limit, I went and checked in on the line of the rope, and they'd already cut that off at that point, so I couldn't get in for another round of that. But I went to the VR area, and I did something which somebody else had recommended to me called Virtual Screams, which it's a company developing VR experiences where people can confront a specific fear or phobia. They used Oculus Rift, and they had a demo reel. This was really interesting for me because, again, like Mike, you know me, and I'm all about the emotion and the psychological play and with the effect that it has. Well, this is a company that's actually like it's a sort of a starting company, and they're trying to develop this. And what they did is they put you into an Oculus Rift headset, and you basically, inside the VR experience, you move forward along a track, and they tell you you're going to be facing specific fears. And there was fear of darkness, there was claustrophobia, and there were spiders. The darkness one was actually quite elegant, where you were in complete darkness, except there was fog beneath you, and there were candles floating in the air. And you just very slowly floated forward, and as you floated forward, the candles floated by you until eventually you ran out of candles. So you went from candlelight and the fog drifted away, and then the candles drifted away, and then you are left in complete blackness, and you hear things or you imagine things in the dark, obviously, at that point. So that's a fear of darkness phobia. The next one was claustrophobia, which you basically are in a box, and you hear dirt above you, so it kind of gives you the idea that this might be a grave, or that you're underground because you hear scuffling and stuff above you. But what happens is the ceiling of the box like jumps downward. It falls a little bit. And that happens a couple of times. So if you're claustrophobic and you turn around and you look through the VR headset, all the walls are very, very close to you. And then the ceiling starts to come down, and then it ends. And then you move into another area where, again, you're like in a seat on wheels, basically, in the VR experience. And you're moving down a track, and you encounter spiders. And you encounter one huge spider that is cocooning something that looks like a human body. And then it jumps towards you, and you jump backwards. So each of these, obviously, if any of this is a trigger for you phobia-wise, definitely this would affect you. And I was told the anecdote afterwards by the people running this that they had been also at Midsummer Scream the previous weekend. They actually had someone rip off the headset during the claustrophobia section because they couldn't take it. Like, as soon as the ceiling hit and dropped, they said they ripped off the headset and said, I can't do this. I can't take this. Now, the spider that you face is, I don't want to say cartoony, but like there's neon green spots on it. It doesn't look like a realistic spider. It looks like sort of a mutation alien-esque spider. But if you had that phobia, the movement of the spider was so creepy and realistic, and the way it jumped forward suddenly, I could definitely see it messing with you if you had that particular phobia. Which, Mike, I don't like spiders, but it's not a phobia fear type thing with me. The most effective thing for me was probably the claustrophobia thing. So virtual screams is something which I hope they do develop more. That's their goal in the long run, is to develop more of these. And immediately I said, like, this obviously has psychological ramifications. This is an interesting conversation to have of, could virtual reality help people overcome fears? Because, aversion therapy is something that is real, where it's like, if somebody doesn't like snakes, you hand them a snake.
Right.
And so this would be a way, I think, of putting yourself in a very realistic scenario where you could face a fear. So I found this fascinating, that the fact that they were concentrating on phobias. So definitely, and actually you can get a little bit of a taste. If you look these guys up, you can find a little bit of a taste. They have a demo reel on YouTube.
Is their demo reel on YouTube like VR compatible? Like, can you use Google Cardboard and hit the thing on YouTube for VR?
The thing that I checked out on YouTube was not their full demo reel. It was actually just sort of a trailer where you get the image of the spider. You can sort of see what they're going for. And no, as far as I know, it's not Google Cardboard compatible yet. I think eventually they'll get there. If you do want more information, I would check these guys out online at virtualscreams.com. They do have a Facebook page at Virtual Screams, and in Instagram, Virtual Screams, Twitter, Virtual Screams. And they do have a YouTube channel titled Virtual Screams, all one word, and you can check out a little demo of their demo reel, which does give you a couple of the images, like I believe the floating candle is on there, and like a hint of the spider. So yeah, it's just I've just found it interesting of what they were going for. And, like facing fears through a virtual reality experience is something which I think is a very valid thing to explore. They're going there.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was really fascinating to kind of experience it. It made me want more.
So that ended your day on Sunday.
Yes.
So that ended the convention for us. So that finished our back-to-back convention weekend. Now that they're all done and we experienced everything, what are your thoughts about having 2 Halloween conventions in a short amount of time? Because my worry was that they would be carbon copies of one another, and I did not find that to be true at all.
I don't think they were carbon copies at all.
No, and I'm so glad that they weren't. And each one, even though they both were Halloween inspired and horror inspired, they both had different focuses, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And even though there was some overlap, we did see a couple of the same vendors both weeks, but there were people that were at Midsummer Scream that weren't at Scare LA and vice versa. For example, our first interview on this podcast with Bob, he wasn't at Midsummer Scream. Like the virus wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And, things like Heretic and Creep, like both things we loved, weren't at Midsummer Scream. But Midsummer Scream had things like Blackout VR, like the Blackout Anthology, which, you had just talked about VR with Virtual Scream. So, each one had something different. And, even we spoke about this earlier, but the people behind Alone and Screenshot and Shine On having 2 different shows for each one, they could have made it easy on themselves and do the same show both times, but they didn't. They did something different for each show. And, right there, doing that makes each convention even that much more different.
True, very true. And I think that made it more exciting for those of us who did attend both conventions. Because, I know people who were out of town the weekend of Midsummer Scream, so they really enjoyed Scare LA because they hadn't, had the chance to do the 2 conventions the way we did. So I think part of the concern, Mike, you had said this to me before we went to either of them, was sort of, is this town big enough for 2 conventions? How do you feel now?
I definitely, absolutely 100% think that there is room.
Yes.
I think these can both happen.
Yeah, I would prefer that they didn't happen one weekend after another.
Right.
I don't know how the split would be because obviously we're leading into haunt season. So that's a factor in the timing of a convention like this. So, and you don't want to put something like this smack dab in the middle of haunt season because then you're competing with the same thing that you're wanting to support to some degree.
Right. Plus, with all the haunts, they're probably not going to participate because they're going to be busy running their own thing in October.
Right. But I wish it were slightly wider distance between the 2 of them, but I totally understand how this happened. And you're right. I think the focuses were different enough. I think at Scare LA, you did have more film-oriented stuff than Midsummer Scream had. Which is interesting and definitely very valid. I thought there was the haunts were different at each of them, so there's definitely room. And the conventions, I think, might end up defining themselves slightly differently in the future years. It took me a little while to warm up to Scare LA because of their announcements. Their first announcements just didn't intrigue me.
Right.
But the closer they got, the more they announced, like, oh, that would be interesting. Margee Kerr, Todd Robbins, like those things started appearing. It's like, oh, like this is really interesting. The Margee Kerr, the fact that she was there at Scare LA, that's a different take. Like the fact that you're, the scientific approach to fear,
right? That's
fascinating, and I loved that panel. So, like you said, different things for different people, but also some overlap, which, like, I am very glad that I attended both conventions, both days.
Me too.
Because both days were completely full for me.
And with the overlap, there wasn't enough to make it noticeable, if that makes sense. Like, obviously we noticed, things, but there wasn't enough to be like, oh, I don't need to go Sunday because this, and this I didn't do, but I did them last week. There was none of that.
Yeah, the only place that took place for me, and I think it happened for you in a couple of instances as well, is just a couple of the escape rooms brought the same mini puzzle or something to each.
Right.
So we didn't do those a second time. But there were other mini escape things that happened.
There were escape rooms that were at Scare LA that weren't at Midsummer Scream, and vice versa.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, like for example, Countdown was at Scare LA. And did you visit the Countdown booth?
I did.
Did you see the bottle puzzle?
I don't think so.
Oh man, that was tough. It was like, and it was. They did have people succeed in it, but they have, it's perfect for a convention because you have a bottle, and there's a sort of like a wooden dowel blocking the mouth of the bottle, and there's a key in the bottle, and you have to get the key out, and that's all I want to say. Because I don't want to spoil too much, but yeah, it's a really fascinating little thing. Things like that it's just so fun to wander the floor and find things like that.
Or like the zip line.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh,
and mobile escape room.
Oh yeah, mobile escape room was out in front, and so definitely I feel that there's room for the two conventions. I think in years to come they will probably define themselves slightly differently. The thing at Midsummer Scream, I think you had more variety overall, maybe.
Yeah.
So Midsummer Scream, I think for me was a bit more fun. So
it seemed Midsummer Scream was more about the local scene for the most part. Like
they interesting. Maybe that's why I'm feeling that.
Like they had Zombie Joes and things like that. They had some of the home haunts around here.
True, very true. Yeah, valid point, actually. Maybe that's what I'm reacting to, and I haven't cemented that in my brain. But yeah, both conventions had a good time. I think at the beginning of Scare LA, they were having some line problems. I heard from other patrons, and I heard from a couple of vendors that they felt it was a little clunky at the beginning. But, that's something that will be worked out. So definitely, I think, Mike, you and I both had a good time at both conventions. This past weekend at Scare LA offered a lot of variety and a lot of really fun things. So definitely a thumbs up for this past weekend for me.
Yeah, me too. For more information on Scare LA, you can go to scarela.com. On Facebook, Scare LA Con. On Instagram, Scare Los Angeles, as well as Twitter, Scare Los Angeles. And I wanted to give a couple shout outs to some people that I met at Scare LA this weekend. The first one, and this is someone who does a podcast that you turned me on to, Kat from Boys and Ghouls.
You met Kat finally?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome. I did not run into her, and I knew she and Marshall were going to be there, and our paths did not cross.
Yeah, so that was really cool. And because I was in line waiting to do the zip line, and all of a sudden I hear a Mike, and I was like, oh, yeah. And it's like, oh, I'm Kat. And I was like, oh my God, Boys and Ghouls. Like, nice to meet you finally. And so that was really cool that, thank you for actually coming up to me, because I would not have seen you, because my attention was obviously on, am I going to die as soon as I step off that platform?
Yes.
So my headspace was in a different spot. Thank you so much for coming up to me and saying hello. It was nice to meet you and Marshall. So thank you. And everybody should check out the Boys and Ghouls podcast if they get a chance, because it's fantastic. And both Russell and I love it. The next person, and this was someone, again, I had my back to it in a line. And all of a sudden I hear are you Mike Fontaine? And I was like, oh, yeah. And he's like, oh, I'm Justin. And I was like, oh, my God, Justin. And he said that he listens to the podcast, and he's definitely on Facebook and has commented and liked some of our things. So.
Oh, yeah. And he approached me. We went through Zombie Joe's together.
Oh, nice.
That's where I met him.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Yeah, so I'm glad you met him. And he was actually in the panel, and he asked a question near the very end of the Blackout Experiments panel.
Okay. So yeah, Justin, thank you. It was awesome meeting you, and thank you for listening. And we'll see you around in other creepy, dark places. Yeah. So thank you again. And then the last person is Candace. Candace found out about us at Scare LA because of the Tension Experience, I think. She said she found a flyer, or she was given a flyer for Ascension, and then did some research on it and found out about our podcast and just started listening. And she's been amazing. She signed up for the Tension forums. She's tweeted us. She's liked our posts. She's shared, and she's listening to the podcast. And for someone that new to want to be able to do those things, like, that's incredible. So Candace, thank you so much. You're amazing.
That's awesome.
So that about wraps it up for our Scare LA special. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let us know. You can email us at mike@myhauntlife.com or russell@myhauntlife.com. And that's with 2 S's and 2 L's. You can check out our website at myhauntlife.com and on Facebook at myhauntlife, also on Twitter, myhauntlife. So thank you again. And I'm Mike.
And I'm Russell.
And thanks for listening.
I'll hopefully be able to slip that in somewhere. How old are you, 12?
Sometimes. Inches.